call this regular monthly meeting of the Exeter Town Council to order. Ask Madam Clerk to call our roll.
Cal Ellis,
Here?
Frank DiGregorio,
Yeah.
Mike Khan,
Here.
Manny Andrews,
Here.
Dan Hunt.
Here.
Our first matter of business is a public comment. And that is items on the agenda can be addressed by you now, not necessarily later, but other issues that you wish to bring to our attention. And it appears, Asa, you'd like to speak.
Okay, so I have comments on three things on the agenda. First, from Manny regarding the website, our little town made news worldwide again for getting hacked, cloned, and impersonated to access Facebook's law enforcement subpoena system. So maybe it's time to add a security review to the website plans. Next, on the 35 Highland Court zoning, this land was classified agriculture when I bought it from Rhode Anderson decades ago. It was classified agriculture when I pulled the first permit for the Red Barn in 2014. It was still classified agricultural on the day Carl bought it from me, the same day he applied for his building permit. You're allowed to pull building permits associated with the principal use by right, and this lot's in the RU4 zone where agriculture is a by right use. I still have the zoning permit, building permit, and property record card from 2014 when I pulled the first permit. Now, sometime after that second permit was issued, the town, not the owner, changed the use classification from agricultural to residential. I'd be real interested to know who changed it, when and why, because that seems to be the only basis for DiGregorio saying residential is the primary use. Why did the designation get changed? I don't know. Maybe Frank asked the tax assessor to do it, like Councilman Khan asked the 911 coordinator to assign an improper address to my lot 3622, without my authorization and against 911 guidelines. This would have sent rescue vehicles to a place where they couldn't get into the property. I like to think I've been pretty calm since this mess started, but this is the first time I got really mad. Life safety is more important than politics or permits. Farming and clearing can be dangerous work. Even when you take every precaution, things can go wrong, mistakes happen, people can get hurt. If someone's bleeding out, seconds count. If something happened on my site to my crew and I found out they couldn't get the help they needed because you sent rescues circling around someplace where they couldn't get in, I'd come looking for you. And the conversation wouldn't be a happy, pleasant one like this one. You want to talk about time liability? That's orders of magnitude higher than a driveway blockade. And Frank publicly threatening to take away her responsibilities for doing the right thing, that screams whistleblower lawsuit. All that stuff you posted about Valerie Plame on Facebook, you know better. You're already the most expensive town councilman we've ever had, with 10+ lawsuits and court cases triggered directly or indirectly. Do you really need to increase that number? So back to the barn. Carl stopped construction, put the lot up for sale late June. Moving the statues didn't fix anything. Since June, he's had 8 serious prospects, of which I personally talked to 7 with the agent. All planned to modify or remove the fish barn. All planned permitted agricultural use on the land, although use incompatible with the presence of cattle. All walked away when they learned the cattle would be there indefinitely, most recently just this last week. The cattle will be there indefinitely because my sales agreement with Carl states the cows stay until the current owner releases that obligation, and any future lot owners would be bound by the same obligation. I started working on the well, barn, fence, and pastures to move the cows back last November before my contract with Carl was even finalized. That work mostly stopped when the town dropped barriers across the end of the state. Is it the town council's fault the fish barn got built? No. Is it the town council's fault the current situation hasn't changed since June? All those buyers walked away and for over half a year nothing's changed? Sure it is, 100%. So if you want to see the problem truly solved, remove the barriers and reinstate my permits. The well gets done in a couple weeks, the barn over the winter months, and the fence lines by March or April. The cattle move in spring, Carl's obligation gets released, someone buys the property and does something about the fish. You look like heroes for solving a problem you're perpetuating. If that doesn't work, things stay as they are, right? The cows don't mind the fish. If they stay, the lot doesn't sell, the fish farm stays in its current state. How long? Who knows, maybe years, but well past this year's election season. Since people are still slowing down and stopping to look at it, that'll be a great place for campaign signs, right? I wonder what they'll say. Last, in my spare time, I had a chance to visit the DEM again. Here's the full stormwater report that revoked our permission to use the state permit. This is the one Steve Cal got back in July, way before the November meeting, where Cal asked Steve 3 times if we had a valid stormwater permit. Steve said yes 3 times. Interestingly enough, it was a public works failure to keep that plan updated that triggered the stormwater inspection, which triggered the wetlands inspection, which created the enforcement action we're dealing with now. If we had a valid stormwater plan back then, like Steve said we did, maybe we wouldn't be dealing with the enforcement action at all.
There being no other names here on the comment list, we'll proceed to number 4. That involves acknowledgements and announcements. And actually, I would like to just make a couple of announcements. One, an acknowledgement. First, the council has received a communication, a monthly communication actually, this past month from our Director of the Department of Social Services. And she wishes to thank all of the volunteers and donors that helped make the holidays better for so many. She lists a number of local agencies and individuals, and she goes on to say that the department was able to help 100 individuals in Exeter. So to Christine's credit, I think that needs to be recognized. I'd also like to read one paragraph in her report for your public information. There has been a steady increase of seniors wanting to remain in their homes. However, they are unable to keep up with repairs and have self-neglect issues. My department is working with the Office of Healthy Aging Senior Division through the CAP organization. It's a community action program to assist, but unfortunately the costs are beyond their reach. If anyone would like to offer their talents to repair floors, roofs, or ramps, please reach out to my department. That's from, again, Christine Hartz-Skaggs, who's the director of our Department of Social Services. And then the other announcement I'd like to make is that we've all received a notice or a message from the Tamaqua Indian Museum in Arcadia here in the town of Exeter. And that notice also included not only a description of the work that's done there, but a suggestion that donations are always welcome. So I'm pointing that out to you, should any of you feel an interest in helping to maintain the history of our Native American population, particularly locally, through the Tamaqua Museum. This information is available here at the town hall. So again, I'm speaking not only to you, but to also those who might be watching us through YouTube. Just another announcement to let you know that it's available to watch these proceedings every month. Thank you. Any other member of the council wish to make an announcement or acknowledge? Hearing none, we move to the approval of the agenda order, and I'll move that we approve the order as presented.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Those in favor? I'm
Now,
sorry,
I have to
discussion?
recuse myself from E1.
Was that, well, that doesn't deal with the agenda order.
Oh, okay. I'm
Wait,
sorry, yeah.
just a minute.
Yep.
Let's approve the order. Any other discussion? Motions on the table, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
So voted. Now we move to the consent agenda. I think you wanted to move to E1, Dan? Is
E1, I have to recuse
Is that
myself.
correct? Okay. With regard to the consent agenda, a couple of comments I want to make. Item A is the Reynolds Charitable Trust, and I just want the public to note, we should all note, and I'm sure you have council members, this voucher is a $2,000 payment. We will approve tonight a $2,000 payment to support the Meals on Wheels program that services some folks, apparently not many in Exeter, but there was a recommendation from, I believe, our Social Services Director, Christine Skaggs, that donation be made so that Meals on Wheels could expand their program here in this community. So that is one of the vouchers that appear, the voucher that appears this month under the consent agenda. With regard to reports, I would like to remove numbers 10 and 14 for discussion later in the agenda. Are there others, Frank?
Number 5, 16, and 17.
Mike?
No.
Danny?
No, thank you.
Dan?
No.
Moving on to communications, there are a number, as the council notes, that we will be addressing here during the course of the meeting. But in addition to those, items 12, or numbers 12 and 17, please. Frank,
I don't have any.
Mike,
Likewise, none, thanks.
and Dan.
I'm all set.
Okay. As I said, there are several that you'll see listed at the back of the agenda. By the way, there are copies of the agenda here on the table, should any of you wish to have one, so you can follow our progress. Have the schedule of January meetings, and if you haven't noted already in the communication or information you received, I have called a meeting for a week from tonight. It's a Monday night, the 13th. We need to address an issue of a firearms dealer's license moving from one location to another in town. So that's a special next
I
week.
don't know if this is the time of other administrative issues. I forgot all about it with the holidays, the pilot money that we put in every
We'll
year.
get to it, administrative.
If we can put that on,
Oh, for next.
because we have to vote on a resolution to send it up there.
We've already talked, Lynn and I have talked about any additional items that we might want to bring forward tonight that we can address next Monday. And Ken, we'll be talking, Ken's gonna be talking to us too, so
So do that
Dan.
other
Yeah,
administrative issues.
Dan, be sure to do that. Note that we have minutes from the regular meetings of November 4th and December 2nd. Also a work session that was held on November 20th. All as part of the consent agenda. So I will entertain a motion that we approve that consent agenda with the exceptions noted.
Seconded.
Motion is made and seconded. Other discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Moving to item 7, vacancies continue. We have a resignation. We've received a communication number 8 from Peter Wilbur. He had volunteered to serve on the Economic Development Task Force. He's indicated that he's no longer able to do so. We can note his resignation, we could accept it. If you wish to accept it, we will do that by motion, or we can simply note that he's
I think we just move it.
I would say we note that he's resigned from the task force, which of course raises the question about whether or not we wish to continue to invite people to join. We already have, I think, 10 members, so we're, I think, a functioning task force of 9.
I think we're well stocked.
If you wish to move in that direction, any member of the council, this could be an appropriate time. But it's fine with me. Would you wish to open the door and see if others want to join? The door is always open. This is not supposed to be an exclusive task force, so anytime someone wishes to come forward, we have 9 members now.
I think we had advertising,
We did.
we got a very large
We
response.
did.
So I think we probably exhausted
Would you
it
have any
already.
Comment?
But if there is anybody that would like to come, I think the door is still open.
More than enough?
Right, it wasn't, that's what I was suggesting, but then you seemed hesitant, so I wanted to ask. Okay, we'll leave it. Well, I hope the 9 continue to come forward on a regular basis. This is good. Regarding appointments, regarding 7C, there's an interesting development that just occurred. I'm gonna ask Clerk Lynn to just speak to it quickly. That's the vacancy of an alternate representative on the Wood Pawcatuck Stewardship Council. Lynn, what did you hear?
I got a call today, that Nan and the, program director, or council, one of the council members, she and Nan have, remember, we appointed Nan as in place of,
Nan Quinlan.
Yeah, Nan is,
they've sat with someone who's pretty interested, but is going to attend a meeting of the council on January 22nd. And then if she thinks she's gonna, would like to be a member, she's gonna give us a letter, so maybe we could appoint in February.
oh,
So
by
they have someone
February.
in mind.
By
We haven't
February.
received any letters.
They have a letter of interest in serving as an alternate, which apparently, from what I learned from Peter, and I told you last month, is a fairly active group. And they're quite large, and they're very concerned about that part of the environment. We get to a tax assessor's clerk. I think you've seen the posting, and we're holding that open until it's filled. I'm told by Carrie, the assessor, that she has had interest, and she will be interviewing, and she may have a recommendation ready for us in February. Regarding item C3, we have received the communication, which is number 9 on your agenda, and with regard to appointment of a tree warden, typically is the DPW director. He currently holds a position. We recommend that we reappoint him to that position tonight. Is there a motion to that
I'll
effect?
make that motion.
Motion is made and seconded, discussion. Those in favor say aye. Opposed? So voted. You got the job again, Steve, thank you. We know you do it because you're out there, so thank you very much. And that item D seems to be blank, Madam Clerk. That's okay, that's not a bad thing. Going to move to number 8 rather. We have 3 public hearings this evening. Just give me 1 minute, counsel, please. Put your hearing information in front of me. Item 8A. Thank you. Item 8A is with regard to proposed amendments to our Code of Ordinances, Chapter 34, regarding solid waste. The collection and disposal, Sections 34 through including 34.190, Article 3, recycling, Section 34-191. That being said, we're talking about basically the regulations that we use to regulate our, I am gonna call for a motion. I am gonna call for a motion. I'm not starting the hearing, I was just explaining what this is. And then I am going, it just has to do with the regulations regarding the transfer station, in essence. So I'm gonna ask for a motion that we open the public hearing.
So moved.
And a second. Motion is made and seconded. Now we open the public hearing. I would ask, first, well, I'm not gonna ask first if anyone wants to speak. It's blank, but you may wish to. Once we work on this in front of you, perhaps you have questions. We're not trying to exclude anyone. But let me just say that this is a product of several months of work. We've discussed issues here in a work session format. The Director of Public Works has worked in concert with the staff here at the Town Hall. And in essence, what this revision does is clarify some what were gray areas that make it a bit clearer as to functions, supervision, etc. I think the most, for me, for all of you, I think the most significant issue is that the dates are changing. And for years, stickers, dump stickers have been issued to expire at the end of August. And some of you are aware that this has caused a bit of a disruption over Labor Day weekend, which is not the weekend when people want to have issues with trash, et cetera. And so, I think one of the most important parts of this is that the stickers are now gonna be issued prior to the 1st of October. So, dump stickers will not, oh, excuse me. That's an old Exeter thing. The transfer station stickers. I've heard you say it too. Because you do dump your trash, that's just not like we used to. Anyway, the transfer station facility stickers will be good for a year, beginning in October 1st. And you might ask a question, what does that mean to any of you who currently hold one? You get to use it another month, is at least my interpretation. Do you interpret it the same way,
Correct.
Steve? So you get a 13-month ride on your 1-year pass, and folks will be here all that month before, available to renew. I know you'd like me to tell you that this suggests a reduction. Sorry, no, it does not have an increase, but we do need to see what happens as we move forward with just the whole new process. And you might wonder, by the way, we still don't actually own the transfer station site, even though some of you were present and approved the expense of the money. We're waiting to work out details, so we continue the lease, but hopefully we will eventually get to a point where that purchase will be completed. So that being said, there is a requirement that this ordinance, proposal, amendment, whichever, be read in its entirety. I'm gonna ask if the council wishes, I would be happy to forego the page-by-page detailed reading of this ordinance. But I would let you know that before you leave, if you need a copy, there are some here. I don't want you to leave right now, but there are copies here for you if you'd like it. Well, that being said,
I think there's one other thing that
Please,
you mentioned that was
counsel.
changed. There were some conflicts between what was in our ordinance and what was in the regulations that were at the clerk's counter, and those have been corrected, so that there's already conflict.
corrected some discrepancies between what the state has required and what we've had in front of you, and those have been corrected, along with some other language issue. Before we ask for anyone to speak, anyone else want to speak to this right now?
Well, thank you.
Then I'm gonna ask Steve just a quick highlight on what you've done and what you can process, please.
Most of these items have been corrected due to issues that have come up in the last 10 years or so, 5 years, and especially the last 2 years. The date change, obviously, for the holiday weekend was an issue. Some other language is just to correct some managerial processes. There's no change in the fee schedule other than we eliminated the cost for e-waste, which were TVs, microwaves, and computers. They're now free under the e-waste program with the state. They changed their fees. And the unrecoverable mattresses are at $50 as based on the state fee that we have. The town has to pay when we have those. We added the fee for trailers, because that was being, just trailer loads of stuff was coming in with no fee. And that was costing the taxpayers. It was probably the second biggest thing I think that was added. And then business vehicles are allowed to bring household trash in, but not demolition or large loads, just their regular household. So if you have a work vehicle that's supplied to you from your business, you can use that to bring your household trash only to the facility. So it's not, you're not being penalized for having a business vehicle.
I think you'd probably characterize most of it as some omissions, corrections, clarifications.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah,
Some language
there's just-
changes for resident versus residents, things like that.
Sure. One issue I just want to point out on page 6, if any of the council might have noticed this, And if any of you are picking up copies tonight and you look at it, you would note that there are dates on page 6 that need to be adjusted by a month, where it indicates that the stickers are good from September 1st to, or no, if you've come into town in the first 3 months of the issuance, there's no difference. But then it's prorated, so someone that moved into town or just needed to apply because they stopped their own pickup or service and decided to use the transfer station themselves personally, there would be a prorated fee.
That, all those dates will just change by 1 month based on the moving the sticker fee of date to October.
So other language was corrected, that was just something that in reviewing the piece. So that's going to be corrected.
Yes.
Because that would be an amendment to what we have in front of us if those dates be corrected. Council, questions?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, you can.
Can you just explain what makes a mattress or a box spring not recoverable?
All right, the state has rules. They have photographic cards I dropped off with the attendants. That basically, if it's soiled to the point where it's black and it was originally white, that's unrecoverable. It is ripped, torn, or the box spring section is broken, the wood frame is broken, that is unrecoverable. That's what the, and when they say rip, they mean big rips, not just like a little rip. That's not a problem.
Right.
When it's big rips, soiled, broken, that's what the state classifies as unrecoverable.
Okay.
And they go into the landfill, but you have to pay a fee for that. So we have to separate them when we take a load to the central landfill. So that's the whole process there. Or you can send them up in a full dumpster load, but you can't store them outside uncovered. So it becomes an issue of unrecoverables.
I understand.
We don't get many at all. Very, very few that we cannot push through the system.
And actually, Steve, that does raise a good point, because I'm sure, as you asked, is that an objective, judgmental kind of
There is
decision? And
a
you-
slight amount of that, yes,
There
but there
must
is
be,
some
but you-
color photographs that we have,
That's,
yes.
that's what I wanted you to emphasize, that there are.
There's language
there are
and color photos
guidelines.
based on the state's opinion.
Guidelines which the fellows that operate the facility have those in their possession and can.
I'll make sure they got some new ones, but
Okay, that's good. Good question.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Since I'm on a roll. Did it ever come up to where, like, if you have a sticker on your vehicle and your vehicle breaks down and you can't go to the transfer station, or you have to pay a fee? Was that ever addressed in here? In other words, say my truck breaks down and it's out of commission for 2 weeks and I can't come to the transfer station unless I pay a fee, you know, getting that. So, and then your other car, you still paid that amount for the year, so. if-
there's a provision in the ordinance that allows you to purchase a second sticker for a second vehicle for each residence.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, I mean, we would get that excuse every day that my vehicle broke down, and they would never have a sticker if we had such a thing in the ordinance, unfortunately.
I thought maybe you had.
There's not, I just
said something
can't,
about it,
there's, it's impossible to write that in, unfortunately. People will abuse such a
so- I
clause.
understand that.
That's the dilemma with that. We've discussed that in the past numerous times. And we hear it still, that my vehicle breaks down. And it's one thing the guys do know, I mean, they're there all the time. If they see you come in and you have a sticker on your vehicle and they know it's up to date, and you come in the next week, my truck broke down, they're gonna be good, because they know you have a sticker, all right? And, we were also even at one time supplying them a book with all the names and the sticker numbers, so that in case somebody did have a problem. We haven't had much issues lately, because they know we don't give it away. If we let them come in for free, then it's costing you money, and me money, and every other taxpayer. So that's the dilemma with that clause, or trying to write a clause to that effect.
Okay. Thank you,
But
thank you.
yes, but Steve, actually, Ray's question raises another one in my mind. What if someone owns a vehicle, forget it's inoperable, and they trade their vehicle in for a new
That's not a
model?
problem, they just have to come to the town
Do
hall
they
and
just
they'll
come in
reissue the
with
sticker.
new, I would assume, indicating that,
That's just a reissuance.
Right.
If you break your windshield and they destroy your sticker, just bring in the pieces and you'll get another one.
Or-
Because they have a record that you already bought one.
Or if you show that you purchased a
Correct.
new vehicle.
They have to bring in a piece of their little sticker.
If they can.
They scrape it off a little bit to show us that they have a new vehicle.
Make sure they don't have
You-
stickers.
Right,
Yes.
right.
Leave it to our deputy clerk who collects to make sure that you scrape off a piece of the.
I have another question.
Go ahead, Pat.
Under the clarification, when you said that the probation, and you said if you, I believe you said, if you stop from having someone pick up your trash, and then you decided to come in and
I
get a
did, I
sticker?
thought maybe.
No, no,
doesn't
this is
matter.
only for new residents.
Only
New residents,
in
new
town.
residents.
Good point.
And if they've moved in like a month or whatever, and it's
I read
May,
that, now
then
that
you
you
get
say
a
it.
probation, not anybody that's been here for,
No, it's a new resident.
New
which
residents
makes-
only.
Which makes sense.
yeah.
Well,
I
that
just wanted
makes
to
sense.
clarify
And
that.
I'm glad you did, so that no one misunderstands. That wasn't smart. Thank you. I mean, you were smart, I wasn't. Thank you. Any other questions?
And that's something new, right, Steve?
What's that?
No,
That-
No, that's
Oh,
not
no,
it.
no, that's been around a long
no,
time.
it's been there for quite some time.
Thank
So,
you.
hearing no other comments or questions, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted, and now the matter is on the table. I will move that we approve the new regulations, this amendment in front of us. Motion is made and seconded. No other discussion, I assume, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Steve, Lynn, your staff, everyone, thank you for trying to make this work better. Item 8B, we have in front of us an application for a Boulder Dash, Winter Dash event for Saturday, March 21st, 9 to 3, Camp Canonicus. These dashes are not new, and you can, I think you could dash along with them, probably. I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So move.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. And is the applicant here this evening? Hi, Lynn,
That is me.
I know, and you've come before, and, you
Many
know,
times.
so thank you for coming. Anything new and different?
We might be dashing through the snow. I'm sorry, you said it, not me.
Well, I know, because it's,
You opened the door.
have you done winter at this time?
We
of
have
year?
done winter, yeah, and we did dash through
And
the
you
snow
have
more than
dashed through
once.
the snow,
Yep.
but not a one-horse open sleigh. Yeah.
Not to my knowledge.
Just one in front of the other. I mean, I have the sign-up sheet. It appears that no one has asked to speak. And I won't ask because it's a pro forma. I would tell you, you must know this already, and just for the record, we did have a communication from some, tell me I have the wrong thing.
Town sergeant.
Just a minute. I have the wrong piece in my hand, from the town sergeant indicating that he has no issues with, with your.
There should be one from the fire marshal as well, we spoke via email.
I think that, I don't see it, but she probably has, I mean, she always has, so
Yes.
there's no issue. So I would assume not. I don't have it, but Lynn, do you have that? Lynn?
That's town sergeant.
Yes, we have that. Oh, and we have it in the file. So everything's the way it should be. Questions?
I got one. You do what, 2 or 3 a year? Sometimes more.
2 to 4.
But you don't have a set date every year when you're doing them?
No, it all depends. It depends a little bit on their calendar, and it also depends a little bit on the race calendar for Rhode Island and around the area.
What I was thinking, if you had like 4 set dates a year, just do one of these a year.
Boy, would I love that.
That's why I figured why you have to come up here every single time, you couldn't
Yeah.
get the exact dates. Because I know we do it for the car show at Oak Harbor, we do it the whole summer, every Monday night, so.
I may be able to do that if it's appropriate for the rest of the year. I'm trying to get the rest of the calendar
Sure.
set.
And we also do that with the truck boys too, don't we?
Yeah. So if you're able,
Yep.
approach Lynn and give her several, and we'll take care of it,
Awesome.
okay?
Make it easier.
Thank you.
That's all I had to say, Kyle.
That's a very good point. Thanks, Dan, for pointing that out. Any other discussion? Anyone from the audience? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion. Are there fees? Oh, there are fees.
$288.70 owing in certified mailings, application fee and advertising.
288 what?
$288.70.
To Dan's point, correct me if I'm wrong, Madam Clerk, but if there were one public hearing that had several dates, would we avoid that fee, those fees every time? Did you hear that? Did you hear that? So you can thank Dan.
I'll be working on that.
You can thank Dan, it was a good suggestion, Dan. And then you can discuss at length with Lynn.
Yeah, because I'm sure you got quite a mailing list with that piece of property over there.
Yeah, it's, like I said, it's really just trying to coordinate everything and getting in here in time. But I think I can do it, like you said, for the rest of the year, and then that way it wouldn't be so, yeah. Thank you. I'm sorry, Lynn, 288,
$288.70.
thank you.
And it doesn't have to be done, does it right now? I mean,
No, she
you
was-
can come in, but, oh, you like to do business right here in
Well,
front
I
of?
like to just have it done.
Okay,
And
all
then
right,
leave it
we'll
done.
move on, and you just continue to do your work.
Thank you.
Hearing no other discussion, we close the hearing?
Yes, I thought we did.
Lynn says, no.
Maybe that's the
Okay.
other one.
Motion to close,
So move.
and a second.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to close the public hearing. Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. A motion to grant the application,
So move.
and a second.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded, discussion is none. Those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Push it. And item 8C. This is an application for a junkyard license submitted by Andrew Slater for property located at 565 Newsnack Hill Road. It's a new application, and I would entertain a motion that we open this public hearing.
Seconded.
Motion is made and seconded to open the public hearing. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. With regard to this application, I am, let me just say, first of all, notice was issued appropriately. And abutting neighbors were noticed according to statute. Yes, Madam Clerk. And first, I'd like to ask, I was told earlier that Mr. Slater's out of, not only out of town, out of state, out of, but I believe his son might be here, is that
Yes.
right? Would you like to just share some thoughts about why the application's being made?
So we put this application in so that there's a couple things. When we get these cars in, there's two different things. The scrap metal prices around here at the local junkyard is $90 a ton. With this license, the car's 2 ton. With this license, we can go up to the city now, and it's $155 a ton. So we, business-wise, we can make more. And then the other thing is with there's this website out there, Car Parts, and these crashed cars we're getting in that are signed over, we can now sell parts to car parts, but we need a license to do it.
Well, let me stop you for a minute, and maybe all the other members of the council may know exactly what you're speaking about.
Okay.
But when I got the call indicating that the applicant, your dad, I
Yeah.
understand, could not be present. I said, well, can you just tell me a little bit more about what it is and why you need it?
Yep.
And you may all know this, I learned for myself. When you say cars, you're talking about wrecks,
Wrecks.
disabled?
Yeah.
Vehicles that are towed to your facility?
That we
Because
tow to our facility.
You tow because,
With the contracts we have, we do a lot of wrecks on the local highways and towns, and a majority of them get signed back over to us. And so we're stuck with these cars, and we gotta do something with them.
and they get signed over because they're not.
For a bill, they're not worthy.
They're,
You're right.
what's the word, not to say the total, no, what's the word? Total is the word I'm
Right.
looking for. Fortunately, I've never been in that situation, but I guess many have. So you end up having, they're towed by your business
Right.
to your facility.
Right.
And now you wanna be able to take care of them, get rid of them,
Correct.
take them apart, and make some money from the process.
Right.
Which I don't think anyone could deny you, as long as it's not a nuisance, I mean, to make money.
Right, right.
Anything else you wanna tell us before we move forward? We do have a couple of people that indicated they wanted to speak. We can get back to you.
Yeah, I'll come back around.
That's fine. The questions of Mr. Slater? Well, that's Mr. Slater, number one. There's a gentleman, Stephen, underneath him. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm just,
Yes, please speak.
I'm an abutting neighbor,
Okay.
135 Defthill Trail, which is basically on the same road as Slater.
Okay.
And, no, they're good neighbors, we get along great, good people. My only concern, and why I'm here tonight, is I just wanted to make sure that that the licensing, I talked to Andrew about it, and the licensing was, just enable like a piece of paper that's able to make him more money. The status quo is what I was wondering about as far as, as it be more cars. I mean, the property is full right now, so that's my thing, is like, I think of a junkyard, I think of, piles of cars, miles high, and, it's right there on the main road, and I don't mind people making money, I mean, I don't wanna stand in anybody's way of making an extra buck, on their property, I'm all for it. The only concern I have is really the impact that it will be on my property, so if it's the same thing as he has now, obviously it's not gonna change. I mean, you guys are, the town of Exeter is fine with what he's got going over there now, then that's just the way it is, but that's the only reason why I'm here is for that reason. And, just,
Well, you're expressing your
it's gonna get
concern.
worse, that's my thing.
Sure, and if I were you and you were living close by, I would understand your concern. Would Mr. Slater want to speak to his concern that you don't?
Yeah, there's not gonna be anything really changing right now. You know what I mean? We don't have any plans of doing anything major. We're just trying to take what we have and clean up. And, to the property value, this license was issued to Kratzer, who was the next property down. That's where this license came from, I believe. Just saying.
Well, maybe originally.
Originally, that was originally a junkyard.
Yeah, I can remember years ago, there was a.
And he just turned that license in.
Right. I think the concern here is whether or not you intend to expand that business.
No,
We know there's a facility, I think,
Right.
almost across the street from
Right.
you. And this gentleman might be having that picture in his
No,
head,
that's not what
maybe.
we're-
I don't know, I'm not speaking for you, I'm just saying, but.
That's not what we're looking for.
Vehicles are brought to you because you have a contract, what, with the state police?
With the
or-
state police, so we got state police towing, West Greenwich and Richmond. We tow for all three contracts.
And you wanna be able to break them down.
Break them down.
Get rid of them and.
Get rid of them and make a little more money off them.
Mr. President, may I ask a few questions?
Please do.
So these vehicles, Mr. Slater, are they in an enclosed facility, or are they open to the eye if you're driving by?
The ones that are coming in are in the pen, and then we have some stashed back they're in the back corner of the property.
All right, so they're really not visible if somebody's walking or
Not
driving
really.
by? And if the license is granted, do you have any plans to allow other tow companies to tow vehicles to your place, or will only be the vehicles that
Not at this
you and your
time.
dad tow in?
Not this time.
Okay. And about expanding the business, everyone likes to make money as much as they can. You know, we're
I
just,
mean, expanding wise, right now,
no plans to
no
expand?
plans right now, there's, the property is kind of where we are, you know what I mean? We're
Okay.
kind of maxed out on the property. If something came up eventually, and we could buy more property, maybe we would talk about expanding then, but as of right now, we're just gonna kind of stay status quo and just make, with this license, we can get rid of stuff a lot easier and quicker.
Understood. Thank you.
Just, let me just say also for the record of the public hearing, we do have in our possession a zoning certificate that was issued by our zoning officer, and he indicates that it does conform to regulations, that there isn't an issue here, and this is what he's, your dad, I guess, has included that with his application, so that
Yeah.
we see that here. I thought that should be noted for the record of the public hearing. We do have that zoning certificate of approval. He identifies here, and I'm saying this as much, not as much for you as I am for the neighbors that have a concern. It says proposed use, it's just an additional license, and section of zoning ordinance which permits us no change in present operation. So in other words, it's already covered by current zoning regs, and they've indicated there'll be no change. So the other issue is that this is an annual, I mean, once the license is issued, it needs to be renewed annually. So this is a time when neighbors can be watching, you know what I mean? And you've indicated you're not changing, you've answered that question here. You intend to do what you've been doing. Questions?
Well, I think what he's proposing is actually gonna move these vehicles off his property even quicker. It'd actually be positive move.
Would you hope that's a goal?
That's the hope.
Questions of the council? From the council? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, Madam Clerk, prompted by Madam Treasurer, indicates that there are fees perhaps required?
Yes, $69.70.
Which can be, before a license is issued to you.
Yeah.
Should we vote to issue that license?
Right.
You would come here to pick it up along with a check.
Check. That's fine.
Made out to the town, not the treasurer.
Yeah.
Just kidding. I don't mean to tease, but, you know, she does a great job, and the audit's perfect, and, all right, having said that.
How much was that again? 69 even?
70.
$69.70.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I believe that we closed the hearing.
We can,
Oh, was there a motion on the table? I entertain a motion to close.
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion is made and seconded, speak up, right. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. The question before you is the granting of this junkyard license is applied.
Mr. President, I move that we grant the license.
And
Second.
that's fine, seconded, they say seconded by Dan and others. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
And I wish you well. It's okay. Keep
No,
talking.
we're good with it, I just wanted
Yeah,
to.
keep talking to your neighbor, and, you know, it's a good thing. Thank you. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for your interest. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Then I got straight practice.
Move on. Moving to section 9 of our business, and under new business, Mr. Angie. Oh, you snuck in. James, I'm gonna ask, do you mind coming up, or would you rather speak like loudly? You talk as loudly as I do, don't you? So you could really speak from any. This item 9A is a report from the chair of the Exeter West Greenwich Regional School Building Committee. This is James Angie. He also happens to be our new IT director here, which means he'll probably speak to another item on the agenda very shortly. Thank you. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you for having me. All right, so I'm here in an effort to try and improve the communication between the town council and the building committee. It's been lacking somewhat. I'm probably going to cover a range of things. Just stop me if you have questions. First, I want to make sure everyone has received the communication from the school district regarding the operating budget and what's happened with Rhode in the past 4 to 6 weeks.
Yes.
The building committee really doesn't have anything to do with the school's operating budget, but obviously it's a huge financial impact.
You're speaking of, just to clarify, you're speaking about the huge cut in state aid, is that
It's the
correct?
$900,000 cut.
Oh, yeah, he had to say that word, nearly $900,000 cut, because the state has recalculated, correct?
Fire teachers.
So, be that as it may,
Okay,
the school still needs to do something with this building project that we keep going around in circles on. The question is what, and we're having a little bit of trouble defining what that what is. So I've got two possibilities that are being floated. And as you know, either one of them, to move forward, needs both West Greenwich's council approval and yours. So what I'm looking to do is give you as much information as I can, get some feedback, and hopefully get some kind of idea of what the council will be willing to support in the future. I'm not asking you to vote on anything tonight, but if we don't have an idea what to put in this project, we're never gonna meet the deadline. We just got an extension from Rhode, so instead of having to submit this in February, we're gonna submit it, it's either August or September, but it's next fall. So we have to make a decision as to what we're gonna put in the project, obviously greatly reduced from everything you've seen before. But we need an idea, a direction. So I'm gonna pass out a few of this now.
Just if I can, not interrupting, while you distribute, just for the public's information here, Frank has been representing the council on this building committee, and as James Angie has said, we're not talking about just routine daily operation, we're talking about facilities, if I'm correct, James, and facilities that need perhaps some attention, and this is where your building committee study is coming in.
Right,
Is that
but
right?
as James said, we can't treat this in isolation, obviously,
No.
because it's part of the operational budget, has an impact as to what resources are gonna be available, and affects the financing problem. So it definitely, I know I've been to the meetings, definitely has impacted the scope of work that's gonna be done.
Yes.
It is being reduced. To what level is the question, and to what impact it's gonna have on the budgets of the two towns. That's a question mark too. And that's something I think in the next item on the agenda that Terry Donovan is going to be addressing the school operational budget problem, but they're not independent of each other.
No, and I would strongly encourage the council to work with the school department and fight Rhode on the operational budget issue. It's a real
For
problem.
sure. And we, to that end, you've noted, I think, council, that we do have a session scheduled with the school committee prior to our next meeting at the end of January to look at budget, the operational budget, which helps to put all of this in
Is Exeter
perspective.
sending anybody to the meeting in the middle of January?
Well, that's
the right
the
meeting.
next item on the agenda tonight, so don't go away. Because you're item 3 under new business.
Mr.
So you
President?
might- Yes.
Does it make any sense, I mean, this is a big topic. Does it make sense to have a work session on that? I mean, I think I mentioned to you the last time we had a meeting that I'd like to tour some of these schools to, being a relatively new Exeter guy, to see
Yes,
what I think.
and I'm certainly open to that. I'm kind of, I don't want to say we're hitting the reset button, but we need at least a little bit of direction to even get to the point to figure out what schools have you
That's why I'm
toured.
thinking we should have a work session and talk about it.
Well, that's fine, but I'd like James to tell us what the committee, based on the studies they've done, and Frank's been there as part of that too, if you could share with us, and then as a follow-up, you certainly, I understand what you're saying, because you don't know these facilities.
I mean, it's that, we're
None
not
of us
expecting
really
any
do.
type of decision at all
No, but just,
tonight. I
you're
just
gonna
want to
tell
share
us.
some information, and
Sure,
I'm gonna be
please.
back next month or the month after
Well, please,
to
yeah.
continue to update you.
Please tell us what you're thinking, what the committee's thinking at this point,
So-
if you can.
I'm just glancing at this, and I've been in the construction trade my whole life. This is the one I'm gonna hammer you on. Prefab greenhouse. What in the hell are you building for $346,000? And there's another farmer in the back row that runs about 10 greenhouses. I will do it for 300 grand, whatever they're asking, and I'm not even looking at it. Yeah, I mean, and like I said, I've been in the construction trade my whole life, and that one's glaring out at me. Frank's an architect, and I'm looking at the soft costs, they're extremely high.
They are.
They're way out of whack. It looks to me like the consultants are gonna make more than the trades.
So,
This is something I had brought up at the
Oh,
meeting.
yeah.
Because they got 20% soft costs. I had mentioned this in meetings, I'm a retired architect. Back when I was working with McGuire, schools were one of our primary projects that we were doing, and there were a lot of schools at that point in time. And we were lucky to get anywhere from 4 to 6%.
Depending on, the higher the figure went,
Yeah.
the less your soft cost went down.
Right.
And like, it's roughly 5% now. These guys are out of their
Right.
minds.
And the higher the project cost, the percentage of the fee went down
Yeah.
as well. The other problem I had with it is that, and this is something that's mandated by the state, they have a project manager who's involved. Now, you have an architect. When I was working, there was no project manager. The architect handled everything. I would think in a project like this, and I would prefer to see that the architect hire someone on his staff to handle if the management became a heavy burden, rather than the state having to go to an outside consultant. And then allowing as high as 20% for soft cost, that's, on a project like this, that's $2 or $3 million.
They're
That's a lot of money.
2.6.
So anyway, that's something that we're dealing with.
one of the several items we keep going in circles on. I will say a few things on the subject. One, some of these costs are high because it's educational and state construction, and they have to factor in prevailing wage for every trade. So it's higher than commercial construction by design and by
I know the
requirement.
whole gig very well. I used to do lots of municipal work.
So there's that, and there's also a new requirement in Rhode that not only is it prevailing wage, but 10% of the entire project has to go to minority and women-owned business.
It's always been that way.
That's easy.
Not for Rhode. This is new for Rhode.
Any state contract has
That's
been
always
that way
been a
for
mandate
years.
on
I guess it wasn't
public project.
enforced, but they're enforcing it now. The soft cost, it is high. I'm not as experienced as either of you, but I've been involved in some, and I can tell you it's high. And I've asked the same questions Frank has. The responses I get vary. But one thing that's come across is, this is talking about what we submit to RIDE for a plan. It loosely resembles what happens, but it's a plan. And they won't reimburse a dime that's not laid out in the plan. So if you tell them, I got $2.6 million in soft cost, and then you only spend 1.5, that's great. But if you budget 1.5 and spend 1.7, you don't get any reimbursement on what was not planned for. So that may be part of why these figures are here.
It's funny that you say you get no reimbursement, because I'm sure you recall my comment at the last meeting, I don't trust the state. The state makes promises every day, and they break promises the next day. And so I wanted to know what happens if the state reneges, if we get another governor who comes in and all of a sudden education isn't his or her priority, and they decide that they want to change the deal, which they do all the time. I mean, they're changing pensions and contracts every single day. It's the biggest movement in municipality throughout the country. And so what I'd like to know is, and I'm not sure I've got an answer. There was somebody that said, well, it's the bonds, there's something that says it in the bonds, what happens, but I'm thinking it just comes back to the taxpayer. And so I would like to know what happens if the state reneges or changes their mind, who's on the hook for the money if we don't get the
The
reimbursement?
bottom line is, the state, it's what you said, I mean, they're signing a contract with both towns.
They've
They're
signed
gonna-
contracts
I know, I
before,
understand, let me
right?
finish. That they're gonna pay X. If they don't pay X, you go to court and one side wins. I mean, that's all there is. There's only two parties involved, the state and us.
But the problem is, I hate to shoot the messenger, Jim. You're just doing your job. The problem is, we go to court, it's our money to spend it fighting each other.
And the state's gonna win
And
anyway.
I understand the
And
concern.
another issue with this, the way this is, I can't support this at all. It was it about 3 or 4 years ago, Diane, with the transportation? Where the state of Rhode Island passed a law to get school districts to consolidate, and we're gonna give you this money for transportation. You know what the Raimondo administration did? And it was state law. They took it and said, you're not getting it. We ended up getting it in the end, but it was spelled out right in the general law. The law, this is what you're gonna get. They took the money, said, sorry. And here we are again this year, 900 grand.
Yeah, although, at least in this case, they're following state law on all the gray areas.
And I can see
they're
why
up.
she's running a $200 million deficit when I see numbers like this. Like I said, this just blows my mind.
But I have a question as a
Yeah.
point of clarification. This whole funding of projects of this type, isn't this coming from a bond that was approved to fund a special bond this way? or-
Some of it
That the
is.
taxpayers approved and we're paying for that bond.
I understand, but my point is, it has been approved, so, wasn't it, at the last?
That was
Yes,
approved
but
by the
last
voters in
election.
the last election.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, at this stage, getting into this level of detail, not only would we be here all night, but we wouldn't be any further ahead than we were when I walked in.
That's why I'm thinking of a work session though.
Even a work session, my point is that we really can't tell where the money is coming from. It's at the state level. Like, so to say that the voters approved $250 million and imply that it's approved and covering this is glazing over 100 things. It's really not that way. That's not the case. The state voters did approve the bond. Money is there, and other communities are taking advantage of this and getting money back. Several already have received state reimbursement for their projects. So there is kind of some competition involved, and there is money to be had, but it's not approved. You can't, the money from that bond is not approved and going towards all these projects the way that you're saying.
So then it becomes subjective on the part of RIDE when they review this. I mean, I'm just looking at a roof for Metcalf. If it's been determined that the roof needs to be replaced,
So
I would think that that's building maintenance that comes from a different place.
those are these two sheets.
I think, Mr. Ante can address where the breakdown of the money is in terms of
Sure.
the broad breakdown.
So they're debating currently two projects, big projects. So the first one, which is basically everything from the green line up, totals about 18 million. This covers what they, in marketing speak, call warm, safe, dry. This is more or less stuff that we were audited for in the Jacobs report that says, oh, this roof leaks, this HVAC system's falling apart. This structural, but the kind of need-to-have items. And then where you see some of the stuff that doesn't look like a need-to-have item, like an HVAC, like a greenhouse or an auditorium, we were also cited by, I forget the abbreviation, but the people that accredit high schools.
New England Association.
Yes.
Yeah, schools.
And we were flagged on several items in our schools saying, we're not saying you're gonna lose your accreditation, but these are issues that you should at least have a plan to address. So they took those accreditation issues, they took the safety issues, and they made an $18 million project. The flip side, or, oh, sorry, not the flip side, the green line at the bottom is putting kindergarten at Walden. If you add those two together, it turns from an $18 million project to a $35 million project. The reason that's there as an option is because currently Metcalf is overcrowded. Not exceptionally so, like the kids aren't outside or anything, but we are overcrowded. And we commissioned 2 independent firms to project our enrollment. And both of them agreed that within the next few years, it's going to be severe overcrowding that we will have to address. There is some debate as to whether that will happen, and these are people using math for the future. It might not happen, but if it does, we're gonna have to do something about it. So if we do the $18 million project and say we're not doing the Walloon project, then we'll be a few years in, we'll have a bond issued, we'll be paying on it, we'll be whatever, and we'll have to start this whole ride process over again and do a whole bond on top of it and not get the same level of reimbursement. So there's some arguments to be made for looking at doing it now. But to even talk about that, because that's a pretty large number, we need to gauge support in both communities.
And when you add it to 35 million total, this spreadsheet is just for the first, not counting all of them. So the town
And
of
so the
Exeter.
financing
Now, with the
sheet-
debt service, the 417, is that per town or is that
No,
two towns?
that's net for the district, so that would get divided.
So we're looking at another 200 and change a year just in debt service on 17.5 million.
Yes.
The added Walloon, we're pushing $500,000 a year without any other increases in the school budget.
Pushing it 400-ish.
Yeah, I can get my accountant over there, Maria.
Some debt, no, but some debt, I know it's bleak, Dan, you point, and it is, it's a challenge. But some of the current debt service is being reduced, I think, isn't it? I mean, eventually.
There is a bond that's going to be expiring, I forget which year, that is gonna reduce the school's debt service, but it's not this year or next year. And so that you know what their plan is, if you look at the $18 million side, you'll notice it starts in 2021. So the intention would be that none of this is happening when that big hit from Rhode hits next year. This would be after that. They're not trying to increase the debt service or spend anything while we're dealing with the hit from Rhode.
So the state aid column is based on them paying back whatever the portion is, not state aid that they already give us and are currently scaling back.
So state aid for the operational budget and what they're calling state aid for the school building authority are actually 2 completely separate things. So whenever we decide on a plan and submit it, hopefully get approval and start, whatever plan we're doing, we'll sign the contract with the state, and as we do that project, we get reimbursed. And if we use a bond, which we're gonna have to do for anything of this size, the reimbursement comes as the bond payments are due. They don't give you 61 or 70% up front. They give you the money as you pay the bills, basically. But that is independent of the fluctuating operational state aid every year, that they use a formula based on household median income and all this other stuff to figure out. This will be, once we sign the contract, I hate to say set in stone, but set in whatever you want to think of it set in. To my knowledge, the school building authority has never gone back on a contract. I've looked, I haven't found it. Doesn't mean it won't happen. It won't be a first. That's not the school building authority. I'm saying for school construction projects, when they sign this stuff and agree to reimbursement schedules with bonds and everything, to my knowledge, it has never been broken.
They are 2 separate finance centers. One is the building
It's all
facility,
state of Rhode Island, but
space.
it's 2
The other is
separate.
the operation.
Yeah, the school
But
building
when it comes to
authority.
the town, those come together. And that's where the real problem that comes into play is the fact that the funding has been reduced by almost $900,000. At the same time, we're trying to address school facilities, which is obviously very expensive, no matter how you look at it, when you bring the two together, it presents a very serious problem for the town in terms of our budget and remaining under a 4% cap. And that's the dilemma for the two towns. Because you have these two storms coming together.
Can I give you my opinion, Jim?
Yeah.
It's out of control, like the one thing, we're sitting here doing roofs, right? We're taking out bonds that are gonna pay off in 2050, 30 years from now. We're borrowing money to fix roofs and HVAC that's gonna be worn out probably in 2035. And we're still paying a note on it. I mean, what they need to do, Metcalf, do a roof. Same thing, HVAC at the junior, senior high school. You know, you gotta pick out what is actually needed and get rid of the wish list. And like I said, if you wanna go through with the greenhouse, I'll build it for you. Like, I'm looking at the roof on Wallwood. I did the site work when that addition was put on there, I think it was 96. And they went with a truss roof with architectural shingles, and they're in it. At $1.2 million. I know that roof can be done much cheaper when we get rid of all these consultants and, no offense, Frank, architects. So, I mean, this is so inflated, and like, I'm not an HVAC guy, so I'm not even gonna go into that, so. But, I mean, there's no way I can support this the way they've done it. I mean, like I said, I'm just shooting a messenger.
No, it's fine.
Don't get
That's
mad
what
at
the
me.
message is for.
You know.
I can't argue that this looks inflated. All I can say is the way that this process is designed, Rhode has the regulations, and in some cases, we're gonna have to pick our battles. It's the $900,000 battle we need to win.
Well, that's what I mean, you have individuals coming up with these, how we're gonna do it, and you look at it, they absolutely know nothing about building trades or construction, you know? I mean.
The people that put these numbers together know a fair amount, and this is what they're putting down.
They've always worked in inflated government programs, so.
Probably. But nobody can afford to build or renovate a school in the state without the state's help. It's been architected that way. The minimum you get for us
Yeah,
is 61%.
because you get kickback in state aid,
So-
which is tax money we're already giving them, so.
But if we don't take it, somebody else will. It's not they're gonna give the tax money back. And if you don't follow by their rules as far as what, you have to hire that project manager. And they're not gonna take an answer, or they're not gonna debate that with us.
Or we just
It's
don't do
unfortunate,
it, we
'cause I
just
don't
don't
think we
do
need
anything to
them.
our buildings and let the state take over. Do like Providence, we can do that.
Well, I think the state has created a monster there over the course of the years, and now it's dwelling at the municipal level. As far as I'm concerned, you know, all the things that the school would like to do, I'm in agreement. I think even when they have the $95 million they want to spend, they're all very worthwhile projects. Not all necessary, worthwhile. We got it down to the bare bones, but even at the bare bones now, 17 million, I can see $3 or $4 million coming.
Easily.
Well, for that, just for the cost.
Well, like I said, I'm looking
And the
at
problem
some
is
of
the mandates from the state is requiring, demanding these sort of costs. They're doing these estimates, and of course, inflation is a big problem. But then on top of it, they're offering some, some incentives to help us get some of these things we'd like to see in the future, on the one hand, and then on the other hand, they're taking money away from us on the operational, but how the hell do they expect us to keep surviving? And then I think when Terry gets up and talks to us, she's gonna be talking to us about the operational and how the funding from the state has been reduced and how it's distributed, and how it certainly looks like to me that us in the rural areas, and especially the school districts as opposed to the municipal schools, are being penalized for doing our job efficiently and cost-wise efficiently, at the expense of those in the urban areas that have blown their budgets, and still really getting the bulk of the money. And I think it's been going on for some time. I have been aware, I don't have kids in school, I've never paid attention to this, but I'm sitting here on this council now, I have to pay attention to this. And I can see the damage that the state is doing at the municipal level to us. I've seen it happen at the planning board in terms of mandates that are coming down, how they come in and home rule charter its legs are taken out right up from under it. They undermine our zoning, even, you know, the solar is a good example, where they allow big developers lucrative subsidies, at the same time limiting the powers of taxation at the municipal level to tax these things. That's just one example. Affordable housing is another area where they're undermining our home rule charter. And this is, I think, has come to the point where, at least in Exeter, and I'm pretty sure in West Greenwich too, as far as the school is concerned, the school system, is we're at a point where I don't think we can handle this this type of burden any longer. So I hope the message gets back to the state, for Raimundo and Mattiello.
I hope you help take it there.
Yeah, and I think we're clearly not the only community that's making that message clear.
Right.
And we're all having to subsidize the systems that are struggling elsewhere. And the fact that Exeter, West Greenwich have done a good job puts us in this position. But, you know, realistically, we still have issues that need to be addressed. Maybe not, and Dan makes points about what might be nice, and you've explained why they're there, like a greenhouse. But certainly for some issues that need to be addressed, it's either this way, or it's an operating budget, like has been, not operating, but in the past. This is a different program. Well, anyway, I'm not saying rubber stamp it, but I think we need to give it some.
I'm not looking for anything.
No, I know, I'm just talking to the rest of my council people here, and we don't need to shoot you, and thank you, you're courageous to come here, appreciate it. And because you're concerned, and we all are, because it's not an easy issue. And I know you've all heard me say that, but I started teaching in a brand new school in another community, and it just went for years, and nobody paid any attention to it until it became in desperate need of attention, and that's not a good thing, I don't think it serves any community well to just, because these people did not wanna see taxes raised. It's okay, nobody does, we don't either. All right, having said that, what else can you tell us right now?
I'll answer any questions, but before I do, what would
Tell us
help
more.
immensely is, even though there are certain things on here that I know you don't agree with, there's some that I don't agree with, I would like to leave with some sort of idea that Exeter, in general, the council as a whole, may be willing to support a project of a certain size, because we can't narrow this down or trim costs or figure out exactly what we're doing if we don't, like, if we spend the next 3 months working with architects and, you know, shaving where we can and picking which projects to get to a 18 or 20, whatever the number is, a target, and then we don't get a letter from you guys, that was a big waste of time, and we gotta start at square one again. And we have a pretty hard deadline of August or September. Whatever we're going to do has to get to the state by then, because we're on our second extension. So, I don't know if that's possible, but an idea of where to go would be
I
great.
agree with Dan, and get rid of the wish list items and go for
Well, that's like I'm sitting here like, the roof, that's a no-brainer, you need a roof. I'm looking at the costs, they're out of their mind. Abatement flooring, what do they got, asbestos flooring in there somewhere still?
Some tiles, I think.
And then they got finished flooring, must be to replace it. That's something, those 3 items, yeah, it's needed, because it's only gonna go up in price.
Yeah.
What's wrong with the auditorium?
That is not a structural or must-have issue, that was more,
New furniture?
No, that was a redo of the auditorium. That was from NESAC or whatever for the accreditation. One of the big problems with the auditorium is it's not handicap accessible. And
They can't sit in the top row, I guess, so.
no, it's stage access. Like if you have a student or a guest that is gonna get an award, they have to leave the auditorium and come in backstage, and it's been frowned
I
upon.
mean, that's, if it's ADA, boy, is that an inflated cost.
Well, it's not just ADA, I'm saying that's one of the reasons they looked at it, but if they're going to do the auditorium and making that ADA compliant involves some pretty significant construction, they're also gonna do the AV system and the lighting and, you know, so that's what it turns into. But you're right, that's not an HVAC or a roof.
Yeah. I could see making it ADA compliant, that's the law. But I'm like, if they've got numbers thrown in here, they've really got it padded. Yeah, I mean, even at HVAC in the private sector, and I don't wanna hear prevailing wage, cause HVAC guys are getting more than union guys anyway, that's a trade dying for hell. I mean, it sounds like they're gonna rip every single piece out of that building and redo it all.
The building was not designed well. I mean, I could get into what I know about the HVAC that exists in that building, I don't know how familiar you are with it, but it
Oh, you're
pretty
not
much.
telling me about that building not being designed well, I know, so.
So,
Specifically
I don't think
the
you're far
HVAC.
off from saying that they're ripping everything out and replacing it because it's that bad. There are pieces that the maintenance crew welds together because they can't buy parts for it anymore.
And I guess middle school, high school, they're just replacing flooring. How old is that building now, 1992?
Might be one, but around that area.
The floor is worn in spots.
Yeah.
Gym floor, that's what gets me, the gym floor is cheaper than the rest of the floor, usually it's the other way around.
Yeah,
Gym floors are
definitely, because
all-
it's a special floor. It's a floating floor usually.
I mean, that number's definitely wrong, it should be more money. We're not even gonna get into greenhouses, Jim.
Yep.
Well, I'm just gonna comment, let's not replace a gym floor, but have a leaking roof, because I taught in a system where that happened rather. And
Yeah.
I'm just saying that
Well,
somebody.
that's
no,
what I'm saying, when you look at that
I
number for
know.
the floor, that's awfully low.
That's, my issue
It
is
might
that,
be a repair, I'm not sure. When they say, by the way, when they say middle school, I mean like the junior high side of the
That
junior
might
senior
be a
high. They keep,
refinish, I would
they keep
think.
using that interchangeably. Some paperwork calls it a junior high school, some paperwork calls it a middle school.
Yeah.
But the junior high gym floor, the core floor or whatever is there now, is starting to crack and separate in places. I assume they're gonna replace it. That was pretty low for a replacement, so maybe it's a repair.
I would think, and and everyone else can correct me what I'm gonna say, I would think it would be safe to say that we will come to hear and entertain some modification and essentials that really must be done. Like an HVAC, which I don't know about, but I assume that has something to do with the air quality and heat and control.
Heating, ventilation, air conditioning, that's what it stands for.
Yes,
now.
and I would see, well, I understand, and I would assume that that has something to do with the environment and where the students are spending their days. And don't we wanna provide the right quality of air? I mean, if they say the system is shot, and that's what we've been told, shouldn't it needs to be done, I'm told, yes?
Well, I would think I haven't seen the details on any of this. All I've seen, the few meetings I've gone to, are really schematic drawings just showing spaces and what the uses are gonna be. And have not
It's
seen
an old building,
I went to school.
it's been around for a while. And HVAC has reached the end of its useful life.
But I would
It's a
think
large
as far as
building.
the HVA system, we didn't call it HVAC, we didn't call it HVAC. But at any rate, I think it's probably gonna be compressors and fans and things like that that need to be replaced, equipment, because those do age and become non-functional.
Yep.
Not that they're gonna
That's why I
redesign.
brought that up when you look at the issue of this bond up until 2050. The stuff's gonna be breaking and they're still gonna be
Yeah.
paying on it, you know, the district actually needs to come up with a capital improvements program, much like we've done with the highway and that, and start sticking to it, you know? Instead of all of a sudden, we gotta fix this and fix this, you know?
Are we sure they don't have such a plan? I don't know, I mean.
I don't, they
that's a
don't,
question.
they don't have a
They have a
capital
plan.
improvements
Yeah.
plan.
I would think that, being somewhat responsible, there would be something in
There is.
There is. And ideally, I mean, the HVAC and the roof would last 30 years, and the bond is about 30 years, but I do see.
Well,
So,
is there point in continuing here other than to let James know that I think he goes away from here with a
I think we beat him up enough, so,
pushback.
sorry,
But
Jim.
is it safe to say that some
Well, what I-
improvements would be considered?
but would it be safe to say that you would not consider the wall an improvement
Yeah.
in general? I'm not asking for a vote, I just need a feeling.
Now, out there at the school system, the enrollment's dropped, what, about 400 kids in 10 years?
I don't know the enrollment figures.
Yeah.
Oh, it's more like 600. We've lost 28% of the student population
In 10 years.
since
But you're
2002.
getting an influx of kindergarten kids, and not the older ones, is that why this?
Who, me? You asking me?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, because they're sitting there saying that the kindergarten.
It's a big drop off is going from junior, when you go from junior high to high school because.
So it's the younger kids where we've got more.
Yeah, actually, there are more kids coming in on the young side, but once they hit the high school, they go off to private schools.
I think one of the things that we talked about last meeting, I think you were there too, Paul, was about shifting, instead of shifting some of the population over Wawalone, which therefore required an addition to the Wawalone building, which they want to put in the back, which I think is a very expensive, problematic addition because of the grade and the water problems and surface drainage problems. And there might even be water table problems as well.
No, there's not a water table problem, there's a problem filling the well in that school. When they did the other addition, the well was dry.
But that was a huge question. They were
There's
talking about
alternatives for everything. Like, for instance, instead of doing a Wall and K edition, they talked about, well, what if we move sixth grade, since Manhattan's overcrowded, to the junior high, and make it 6 to 8, and then reshuffle it. But no matter what we do, there's a cost to do that. We have to do some work at the junior high or somewhere else. So that's why I'm saying I'd like an idea of what we think we want to target cost-wise, because whether it's a Wallaloon edition or something else at MedCap or the junior high, it's a figure. So if we don't want to consider a figure that's outside of the top half of this, then that's useful information.
I think it's more important to take care of the schools that we have first before we start to expand.
I think one of the reasons that we're talking about not shifting the population from Wawalone was because of the grade level and mixing the younger students with the older students.
There's
Same
some
building.
community concern if you put 5th or 6th grade in the junior high, because the junior high's bus with the high school, you have 6th graders and 12th graders in the same bus.
That might be able to be addressed through scheduling or.
It would be difficult, busing is
that's
very
less
expensive, and
cost-
to duplicate bus routes.
We had 7 and 12 and that was cool,
Yeah.
right?
That's
6 to
the
12 is not so
messenger.
much.
I think the bottom line is that we're looking at the lowest possible cost that you come up with, because it's, no matter what you come up with, even the lowest cost is gonna be a heavy burden for the towns. And I'm sure everybody here on the council would like to see, us get everything, the school committee and the building they would like, but obviously, the budget constraints just.
I just ran some
Yeah.
ballpark ones, Frank, with much needed expenses, and that, it's at 10 million, roughly 10 million, with the exorbitant soft costs included.
Like eliminating the ones you were talking about.
Yeah. Like the boiler, the boiler, the roof, middle school gym floor, middle school finish floor, high school finish flooring, HVAC, and include the auditoriums. Metcalf, the roof, abatement flooring, finished flooring, I mean,
So
if
no,
they're just trying to get it to ADA, they can really cut that cost. Now, it sounds like they just wanna go in, oh, why we're doing this, let's do this, let's do this.
yes.
James,
Some rough numbers was 10 million, but I'm including those soft costs in the line items,
James, is there another meeting scheduled where Frank, for example, will be attending between now and the end of the month?
It's not scheduled yet.
Oh,
It's tentative.
No,
tentative.
we don't have any even tentative meeting.
Okay, so we're meeting at the end of this month with the other town.
All right, right.
Well, that's
That's
our
the big
meeting
thing.
with the operational budget, I call it, as opposed to this. This obviously has got to be addressed at some point.
Yeah.
So,
I will take your feedback to the building committee and school
The end of the month,
administration.
30th.
Yeah, it's the last week of the month.
Yeah.
Last Thursday of the month. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Don't go too far, because I just want you to speak quickly to the other issue. Let's move on to the second item, that's 9B. Frank is saying that we're gonna hear from Terry Donovan. Terry said she can't be here tonight. However, we have a communication that I want to read for the public because it is significant. I think you all read it, but I think it needs to be said. So this communication came to all of us dated December 24th. And we have all been noticed. She begins by indicating that we have received notice from the League of Cities and Towns about a meeting that's scheduled with the State Education Commissioner. So you may have seen that in some of your past information. She begins by indicating we may know that already. And with regard to that meeting on January 17th at 8 a.m., this is what we're told. Rhode Commissioner Angelica Infante Green, or Helica, excuse me, has invited municipal leaders to a meeting to discuss a new school absenteeism initiative, as well as other topics of interest to local officials. The meeting's January 17th, 8 a.m., room 501, Department of Education, et cetera, et cetera. Since the Exeter West Greenwich School District has been notified that we will be losing $870,471 in state aid for the next fiscal year, I believe it is imperative that we take this and every opportunity to convey how devastating this is to our communities. For context, you should know that approximately 2/3, or 67%, of Providence's school funding comes from state aid. Compare that with Exeter West Greenwich, where now, after suffering approximately $1.7 million in losses over the last 9 years, approximately 1/6, or 17%, of EWG's budget comes from state aid. After next year, when we are hit with the additional loss, we will have given up in excess of $2.5 million in state aid. That lost funding has been absorbed by local taxpayers. It is impossible for our school district and supporting communities to meet the mandated maintenance of effort, contractual obligations, healthcare increases, and infrastructure support while still adhering to the 4% cap. These reductions are crippling. The funding formula is terribly inequitable. Although Exeter and West Greenwich have always, in capital letters, met their municipal obligation to the school budget, other municipalities have not. Of course, districts like ours bear the consequences of their disregard. Charter schools are also having a detrimental financial impact. When a student leaves a traditional public school for a charter, that per pupil funding follows the student to the charter. The school district, however, still has to pay for busing, utilities, maintenance, and other expenses that can't be eliminated because they are school-wide. For these and many more reasons, the commissioner needs to hear from us. EWG school members and administration plan to attend. We are hoping that both communities will send representatives as well. If you can attend, please RSVP as instructed in the League's message above. Thank you for your continued support of the school district. I don't think there's anything more we can say here tonight, other than it's significant. We know it, taxpayers will know it, and on the 17th, I hope that there's someone here. Unfortunately, I cannot be in town that day. I have a personal health issue that I need to deal with out of town. I hope someone here can attend that meeting. Before I speak to you, Paul, I'm speaking to the council, and I'm hearing no response. Is anyone possibly able to go there that morning? I would hope, possibly, and I'm not, maybe you don't know yet. But think about it, and given the way the context of the meeting, given the way it's proposed, that there's gonna be absenteeism as a topic. I think there needs to be someone there that says, we also need to talk about inadequate school formula funding for funding.
Well, I was thinking of going myself until I read the fact that it's about absenteeism. I don't wanna have to go to
Yeah.
that meeting and then this topic is not discussed.
Well, let's see, Paul has a comment.
So.
Paul's a member of the school committee.
Sure he is. Along with that, two things. One, I kind of agree with Frank. I think they may try to shoehorn in to the discussion somehow, some way, the fact that 2 municipalities in the state have a significant reduction in funding from the state. We being one of them, the other one would be Cumberland. The only other thing that I keep in mind, I am not an advocate for the behavior of the state. The state does look at a broad scope of metrics when it makes its decisions. And one decision that I've always kept in the forefront of my mind when the state looks at our district, and again, only 2 districts got a significant hit, us and Cumberland, is that one thing that's not mentioned is we are the most expensive district in the state per student at $21,000 a year. So it costs an exorbitant amount of money for us to educate a child in our district. And those are, I mean, I understand Terry's position and I agree with everything she has said, but keep that in mind is that the state looks at a bigger picture and looks at all the data. And if we go in there with our, saying, yeah, we're one of 2 districts here that really got a significant hint, but everybody else really made out like a bandit, which they did, like Providence, of all the communities, Barrington. I think you guys might guess what the outcome might be. And to Frank, I agree with you completely. That meeting was to go over the absenteeism program to monitor educators' attendance. So I don't know how much visibility you want to get on our issue on the 17th. However, I plan on being there myself.
Well, that being said, you've sort of made a case for why you're bothering, but you're gonna go. And it indicates that the administration says they're gonna be there too, and I think all she's saying, not to discredit her concerns, and I don't think you were,
No.
that what can we expect? And probably as a small rural community in South County, not a lot, but it's worth maybe at least trying. And probably you're right, because as I read it, the agenda is something other than listening to us.
Right.
Anyway, I just want to alert you, I want to share the communication make sure the council's aware and make sure the public is aware of what's happening. And James has certainly, through all this discussion, we're making it more and more clear. And Paul's suggestion is we're spending too much for educating kids.
Yeah, I have a question.
That's fine.
I wasn't aware that it cost $21,000 per student to educate.
That's what the Rhode Island Department of Ed's website says we spend per student, which is a prop, if you can do the math yourself.
You think it's correct then?
I am quoting the Rhode Island Department of Education's website that calculates the cost per student. So for us in our district.
I'm asking you, is it reliable? Would you think it's reliable, that number?
Yeah, we are the most expensive district in the state of Rhode Island.
And
Per student.
per student. And why is that, do you think?
Salaries, benefits, and our very large staff. I don't think there would be any argument. I mean, I'm just gonna talk the truth here, Frank. I'm gonna be blunt.
Facts.
Salaries, benefits, we give Social Security and a teacher's pension. That adds up. We have tops, we pay our educators one of the highest levels, just salaries. Then we give them Social Security, which less than half of the districts give. And we also give them, by law, a teacher's pension, or, a state pension. So you put that, plus you get 157 educators together, it adds up to, because our debt service isn't that bad right now. Our debt service is about, it's on some piece of paper kicking around, but our debt service is not that
So it
bad.
sounds like we got the tail wagging the door.
I'm sorry?
Sounds like we got the tail wagging the door.
All I can tell you is what I know, and
You know,
I,
this is all news to me, like I said. I've never paid much attention to
I always look at the metrics, Frank. I look at the data, not necessarily listen to the story.
We were talking about this in the office out here today, Frank, and one of the issues was Gina Raimondo's pension reform, and they raised the retirement age of everybody before they could get their pensions. And all the people that were hired when the high school were open, they were at top step, top level, they're still, 52 years old, they retired, they can't get their pension yet. Was it like 62 now for?
Yeah, it's
Well,
more traditional.
Yeah.
It's more traditional. They
Those,
raised,
excuse me, those people would, some of them would be grandfathered under the pension plan
Yeah.
when they began teaching, so they could leave earlier than some of the more recently hired people.
to Calvin's point, they are.
Yeah.
So,
What, Paul, do you mean they are retiring?
yes, you see
Well-
about 6 or 7 retirements every year.
So they are, you're starting to see more and more retirements now.
Okay, well, good, and this is a nice expose. We can't fix this tonight right here.
Not going.
No, I'm not saying you're trying, I think you have a point to make. So I just, unless there's other issues here with
I'm
item
good.
B, let's move on to C, if we could. We received a communication from a Ms. Christine Chapeau. She's the Director of Partner Relations for the Cybercrime Support Network. It's a national 501c3 nonprofit organization formed to assist victims of cybercrime, whether individuals or small to medium-sized businesses. This was referred to our IT director, who thought it seemed like it could be a worthwhile presentation if Ms. Chapeau could attend. And I'm not sure if she was able to be here. So if she's not, then Ms. Chapeau is apparently not here. Mr. Angie James had asked, and you could speak to this if you wish, but I know he'd asked if there was material she'd like to share, anything she wanted to bring. Last I knew, there wasn't a response. Have you heard any more from her?
No, we haven't heard back.
Well, which is unfortunate, because she wanted to come make a presentation. She wanted to know what was the best way to get the information out. And I suggested to James, have her come here, speak to us, leave information behind, be videoed, if you will, on YouTube, and give people information. However, she's not present. So, otherwise, we're gonna move on, because you've heard nothing more, James. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I really can't take her place.
No, I wasn't asking you to.
If she comes possibly in one of the next meetings,
If you ever hear from her, tell her it was on the agenda.
their organization is designed to help not the town or not businesses,
Right,
but
but
individuals.
individuals.
If you're a victim of identity
Yeah, it was
theft,
more-
if you're
It's more a
something like
public
that,
service
something that
announcement,
the community can take advantage of if
Yeah.
they become victims of something.
more a public service
Yes.
kind of issue. Item D. Manny, you asked for this to be placed on the agenda?
I did indeed. So, being a retired police officer from Providence, when I moved to Exeter 5 years ago, I was astonished that there was no police department in town. And just so you know, we're the only community in Rhode Island that does not have a police department. Legislation was passed some time ago requiring the state police to patrol Exeter. And the way it's set up, the Wickford Barracks patrols Exeter all the way up to Purgatory Road. Hope Valley protects Exeter, or patrols Exeter when called, down the other side. That's not an ideal situation, God forbid, if there's an emergency. And there's been plenty of emergencies in Exeter, some Some people call the state police, some people don't call the state police. So what I want to do is I want this council to approve the formation of a task force in order to look into the feasibility of a police department in Exeter. I've received commitments from the following people to serve. I think it's a good task force. Myself, DPW Director Matt Scheck, the Town Treasurer Maria Lawler, EMA Director Stefan Kudalakis. I reached out to the state police through Lieutenant Commander Kevin Barry, who spoke to Colonel Manny. They are willing to serve on the task force. We have a commitment from Acting Hope Valley Commander Lieutenant Ron Longaluco, who will serve on the task force, and one of my contemporaries on the Police Department of Providence, Major David LePayton, who's the Chief of the Investigative Division. And what we're going to do is we're going to prepare a report. We're going to get together and look at a comprehensive plan and prepare a comprehensive report to present to the Town Council to maybe move forward. I mean, it's only a feasibility study. It's not going to cost us anything. We're all volunteering our time. And we're going to look at everything from where it's going to go, how much it's going to cost, how it's going to get done. And we have some ideas. The committee, assuming the council approves the formation of the task force, our first meeting is set for next Monday, the 13th. And it's going to be a task force that's going to move as quickly as we can. I don't anticipate it's going to be going a year unless need be. I've never built a police department. I've never formed a police department. I've served on a police department. But we're not going to reinvent the wheel. What we're going to do is we're going to look at similar-sized communities, such as Richmond and Charahoe, who started initially with a temporary part-time police department. I'm guessing from 7 in the morning until 11 o'clock at night with no overnight coverage through the third shift. I'm not sure because I haven't reached out to them. That's going to be the function of the task force. So we're going to look at everything, and we're hoping to come down to a accurate figure as close as we can on what it's going to cost taxpayers. Obviously, we need to finance it, and there's only a couple of ways you can do it. One thought I had, I'm going to bring it out to the task force, is to try to get some money from Homeland Security. You know, we live in a different day and age, and I think everyone should really consider a police department in Exeter. And when you do that, I think people tend to focus on the protection aspect of a police department. But if you look at the motto of just about any police department in the United States, you'll see that it says to protect and to serve. And those are two really important elements. Because if you know, people are going to say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I don't want to pay for it. And I understand that. But on a day-to-day life, it's everyday activities where you need a police department. You know, in the last 20 years, I retired 20 years ago, community policing was the biggest thing going throughout the country. Prior to that, it was police departments really focused on just the protection of the people they serve. But we want to serve people. We want to be able to reach out to people who have a problem with a neighbor, or really anything. The state police, one of the finest law enforcement agencies in the state of Rhode Island. Their job is not to protect the town of Exeter. I'm not going to talk for them, but I can tell you as a police officer, if I was a state trooper, I would not want to patrol Exeter because that's not what I was hired for. There's been a police department in Exeter before, and the report that we prepare will talk about the history a little bit, just so people understand where we're trying to go. We shouldn't wait for a tragedy before we have a police department, and you hear about tragedies every single day. And because of the way things are set up and how the state police respond to calls in Exeter, if they're tied up on a fatal accident on the highway, it's going to be a long time before you get somebody to respond, if they respond at all. The reason I started thinking about this was because I represented a young woman who's an Exeter resident, had a boyfriend, she was viciously assaulted, the guy split her head open. And I said, did you call the cops? And she goes, no, I didn't call the cops. State police aren't going to come. And she's willing to come and testify if there's a public hearing. So you're going to hear somebody that's real, that had something happen to them where they wish that they had a police department. I personally think we owe it to the residents of Exeter. I think we owe it to the future. There's an economic development task force that's trying to bring more businesses into Exeter in order to increase our tax base rather than put it all on the taxpayers. A lot of businesses don't want to come to Exeter because we do not have a police department. So I'm hoping that my goal is to get this done in 4 months. If that's not possible, we'll go longer. But I'm hoping the council will unanimously approve the formation of the task force. That's about all I have to say about that right now. Oh, I'm sorry. One thing we're going to do is everyone's always wanted a new town hall. We're gonna look into the feasibility, we're gonna look into two things. One is the building of just a police department, and another aspect will be adding a new town hall to see if that's feasible. Obviously, we have to float bonds, and it's gonna be paid back over a number of years, but I think it's an investment in Exeter's future that is needed, warranted, and long overdue.
So we can just have some discussion on your proposal. Make that a motion. I'll second the discussion.
Yes.
So this issue of creating a task force is your motion, correct?
Yes.
And I'll second for discussion. Manny, first question I have is, if we set it up as a task force, it's gonna have to be, it will have to be public, so you'll have to be in a public
Yep.
place, it's gonna have to be a record. And is this correct? They'll have
Supposed to keep minutes.
Okay.
So that's one consideration. Now, Manny, you said you were gonna meet next Monday. Do you have a place or a time? Because we need to meet here at 7 o'clock Monday.
We were gonna do it at the library.
Monday
Right, Steve?
night?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
not a problem.
Monday night?
Yes, 6:30.
Oh, 6:30. Well, we can.
What time's our meeting?
7, but as long as we have a majority. Dan, are you able to be here next week?
I'll be here, I will be here Monday, I just have to recuse myself on this one item.
Oh, on that particular
Yeah, that
item?
one item, yeah.
Well, we're probably gonna follow up with a work session anyway, so, but that's all right.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware that there was a meeting. I'm trying to
No.
move quickly on this.
No,
I wasn't aware that there was a meeting.
No, I understand that, and it's not possible, this is business we had to attend to. It's not to say that can't happen if you've already set it up.
Yes.
Post an agenda Wednesday.
Say that again?
You'll have to post an agenda Wednesday.
Okay.
Secretary of State.
Sure. I'll ask you how to do that.
And perhaps Lynn can help too, if we move forward. I have a long-standing concern about this, and I've also met an alternate, a proposal for sort of a contract with the state police. It's not at all what Mandy's suggesting. But what I've also thought is that if we have this information that Manny can bring to us, I think a public forum on public safety will be in order for you to present to people what your task force has found, and what are there other options, and just discuss how significant
Yes.
this is. Because I've been in situations, and you probably all have, where one person says, can't believe we don't have a police force, we need one, and the person next to them says, no, we don't. And so we have to have discussion about that, for sure. And I don't think there's anything wrong with investigating it. It's pricey, but I'm sorry.
Good things usually are, Mr. President.
You know
Essential
that.
things usually are.
I understand that.
Either we're right and the other 38 communities are wrong, or Exeter's the
I
outlier.
understand. Other concerns here that,
I'd like to refute a couple comments that Manny made, where the one comment was, where the state police tell about community policing and the state troopers don't wanna be here. When we've had resident troopers in the past, one of them was Sergeant Vanner, Andrew Carter. Those guys loved coming here because they were doing something other than driving up and down 95 and were getting to work with people. And number two, you made the comment, you make the call, they're not gonna be there. You pick up the phone and call the Rhode Island State Police, they show up quickly in Exeter. I can vouch for that personally, because I've been at a break-in at a building at 3 o'clock in the morning, and the gentleman was here in 9 minutes from Cranston, Rhode Island.
Well, Dan, we're gonna have plenty of statistics to prove that you're probably wrong, but either
This
way,
is
it's gonna be
actual,
a feasibility,
so-
feasibility study.
And like I said, we just had a discussion about a school budget 2 years ago when we were up at the Department of Administration, meeting with the state police over this very issue. Colonel Asupico, I think that's how you pronounce her name. Asupico. We got into the discussion of consolidating, even going to county police departments with them, because the problem in Rhode Island, we're 35 miles wide, 54 miles long, and everybody wants everything. It's to the point now, the taxpayers have reached breaking points. Me and the treasurer did these figures 2 years ago, and we're gonna dig them out again, and it added about $3,800 to a $4,000 tax bill between bond issues and funding a police department. And at the time, We based it on the budget from Foster, who is trying to get rid of their police department because they can no longer afford it. You know, that's all I have to say on the subject. So,
So one of the questions that I would have is, the Economic Development Task Force meeting, we posted, and then people sending letters asking to be assigned or, you know, asking to help. Are we doing that, or are we just taking, 6, 7?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
So like the task force, the Economic Development Task Force and the other boards and commissions, we all repost and then people write in and say, you know, I'd like to be a part of that. And then usually we appoint a group.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to keep the task force at a manageable level with people who are needed. We need the treasurer because we need to talk about money. We need the TBW director because we need to talk about construction. We need 2 law enforcement officers to reach out and tell us how things are run, and I'm hoping to handle the legal stuff. Certainly, we're gonna welcome any comments that the public has, but the task force is gonna be tasked to go forward with it. And I think the composition of the task force now is pretty good to get the job done. If the council feels otherwise, it's up to the council to suggest that I should have John Q. Public or Jane Q. Public on there. I don't want a 20 or 15 person task force because we'll get nothing done.
Well, you seem to be looking for information from people that are currently engaged in that.
I'm looking for the people, the 5 people here who will be able to do what needs to be done to get this report out.
I noticed, did you suggest to Bill Donovan, or did you approach him?
I approached Tom Sergeant Donovan, he did not wish to serve. That's why I took Stefan.
Okay.
In my opinion, this is a no-brainer for the council to say unanimously, do it.
Well, just so that we have information, so we can then,
Yes.
then we can look at it.
Listen,
If we
the
begin
task
to-
force may come back and say it's not feasible. That's the way it is.
And just, this is not gonna have an effect on the way I'm gonna vote here, Manny, but just an FYI, some of you, and you've said it before, having some troopers next door is not just coming and going, is not the same. I know that, and so I never would suggest that. However, when the colonel, that's Colonel Manny, asked if he might house someone here in town, I didn't wanna turn him away, because I think having someone close by, maybe selfishly, because I've had state police at my house twice for break-ins and robberies, and they did report, so it would be nice for me to have someone close, but for any of the rest of it. However, that may not even happen, but I do have a meeting scheduled, because he pursued this, just this coming Thursday morning, to look at the facility. I don't think it may not ever happen, but he just wants someone from the state police that does municipal structure study thing, to come and look and see if it's even something that he can do. And I just want you all to know that, which has nothing to do with this motion on the floor, but I felt this was a time to let you know that that's gonna happen, because I didn't know what else I could tell you, so that's Thursday morning, which I certainly will let you know, but it won't be up to me, it'll be up to the police, state police. So that being said, any other discussion on Manny's proposal to sit?
If this group is just gonna put together a report and then bring it to council for everybody to review, does it need to be a task force?
The minute
Like,
you.
does it need to be a commission of some
Under the,
sort?
Open Meetings Act, and whenever a public body is created or assembled,
Okay.
you have to follow the rules. Now, it doesn't talk about how you're appointed, whether you're appointed, or how many people are in it. It just says when there is, and they use an example of a committee. Even though it's not an official elected committee or anything like that, it's once the council appoints a group of people to do a task that is of public concern generally, it becomes a public body, so that's why we say you need to post and
Okay.
keep minutes. But yeah, and it doesn't matter whether or not you open it up, or whether or not you just appoint a few people to report back to you. It's the same thing. It can be done either way, but you then have to follow the APRA
Can I
requirements.
make a suggestion in terms of Mike's concern about bringing in people to the public, I think Manny has selected people that he feels have significant input towards the goal they're trying to achieve in terms of a report. I would just suggest that you probably stick with what Manny has recommended, but that if there is someone that would like to participate and that you feel they have something to offer,
Sure.
and it does not get numbers that become too unwieldy, because I know to design by committees is to design disaster, that you'd be open to someone who has something to offer.
I certainly wouldn't. Again, I didn't want to exclude anyone. I was just trying to focus on people who could bring a particular function to the committee. And I think I have it covered with money, building, legal, and the police. And by the way, the state police were very, very, very excited that we were going to do this. Very excited.
Okay, now let me put a different spin on this based on this discussion. If we were to, you would ask us if you could go off and research this, and it not be a task force, but you doing the research with people, and then you bring back as an individual member of the council, and not be a task force, but you do research, which then comes to us, could that move away from the idea of having it be a public with an agenda, you know what I'm saying? And,
If they're only finding facts.
yeah, if it's a fact-finding mission, sort of, and I see it akin, way different issue to your research you're doing on our website, which you're meeting with people, and it's not, you know, it's not a task force, you're doing research for us and bringing it back. And can we consider it that way?
Yeah, as long as the people that Manny consults are basically just people that he's getting fact from, rather than people who are putting together a plan that everybody signs on to. Two different things. But if Manny was the person who was, if the council just designated Councilman Andrews to go out and fact find and come back with his report, then it could be done that way without the employment of the task force. But
I'll be honest with you, far too much work. I mean, I work full-time, and I put these people together because I don't know anything about building. And, you know, Steve knows where it's gonna go, how it's gonna do. I don't know anything about bonds. It would take an enormous amount of time for Maria to try to explain to me and for me to put it into words in a report. And I just don't have that time. So I'm looking for a task force, and whatever rules we have to follow as far as the Open Meetings Act, we'll follow.
Okay. So.
And I assume without having to advertise people, you know, you've selected people that you would like to have appointed, period.
Yes.
Okay.
How many have you got proposing for this task force? How many
5
people? In all fairness to the taxpayers of this town, I think you should add 2 citizens to it, make it 7.
It's the council's choice. I mean, I'm only proposing what I proposed. Council wants to make that mandate, the council can make that mandate.
Because like I
I mean,
said, we've done some figures 2 years ago, me and Maria, and it was not cheap, so.
Nothing good is ever cheap, Dan.
Danny, I'm from a different mindset from you.
Absolutely.
I've worked all over the eastern side of
Absolutely.
the eastern seaboard. I've been in many places where, I've been in states where you call the police, they do show up the next day. Wyoming is even better. They sit there and hand you a gun. They don't even bother, the phones don't even work out here, you're on your own. So,
Okay, well, is there other discussion? If not, I'll ask for a vote on the motion, which is to set up a task force, but Manny, are you gonna chair it for
That's
us?
up to the task force, I'd be happy to, but once we meet, we'll appoint a
Okay,
chair and.
all right.
well, I'd like to amend it, have we done a motion yet?
Yes, the motion's on the floor.
I'd like to amend it to include two taxpayers from the town, 2 citizens from the town. So
Okay,
we
there's a
could,
motion, there's a second.
Discussion on that?
There's an amendment, sure.
Yeah, the reason I chose these people is because they bring a specific skill set, okay? The taxpayer's gonna come in, and the taxpayer, unless they have a specific skill set towards law enforcement, their function is gonna be to say, yes, we don't need it, or we do need it, and I'm trying to keep that debate for the proper form, not to get it done. But if the council wants me to do that, we'll do it.
I think a lot of people.
They're the ones paying for it, so if it
Like I
goes
said,
through.
if the council wants that mandate, then let's take a vote.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor and there's an amendment to the motion, so if we could, I'd like to vote on the amendment first, to increase to US.
Two taxpayers
Second.
required.
Is there a second to that? Is there a second to the amendment? Motion is seconded. Amendment motion is seconded. Those in favor, or discussion? Manny, I understand.
I
Those
get
in-
exactly where you're going, but I think
No problem, we'll put the
everybody's gonna
taxpayers
want
on
it,
it.
right?
No worries, we'll do it.
Those in favor of the amendment to the motion?
Aye.
Say aye. Yes, fail, no. The motion to amend the original motion carries, so now we have a motion on the floor to establish a task force as amended with 2 additional taxpayers included. Discussion, those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? So voted. I'll vote yes. Manny, see what you can find out for us.
Thank you.
Okay?
Sure will.
To the amendment.
I have a question.
Okay.
Gonna be 2 people from citizens, how are they gonna post for that?
Make a motion to post it immediately. To post.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to post for 2 taxpayers, 2 whatever citizens to serve on a task force examining the feasibility of a local police force. Second, the motion is made and seconded. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, so voted. Madam Clerk, put a posting out, please. Item E, a policy, new policy, policy number 3.06-1, controlled substances, alcohol testing. Just as a point of information for the audience and council, remember we have a cover sheet regarding this item. It has to do with controlled substances and testing. And let me just read quickly the cover memo to the council from Lynn Hawkins, clerk, and Stephen Matchdeck, director, DPW. Steve and I attended a mandatory meeting with the trust on November 10th regarding the U.S. Department of Transportation's newly organized CDL Drug and Alcohol Clearinghouse. Effective January 6th, 2020, the U.S. Department of Transportation is opening online the clearinghouse for registrations. Both employers and employees are required to register. The purpose of the clearinghouse is to provide a compilation of drivers' drug and alcohol and driving violations that would not be known to employers otherwise. Once council has reviewed this agenda item Monday night, that's tonight, Steve and I will register the employer, the town of Exeter. Employees would have to register should a limited inquiry flag a violation. There is an unmandated cost to the town, $1.25 per inquiry, limited or full, and limited inquiries are to be performed annually. And there's attachment here for us, a form that each DPW worker needs to complete in order that query can be performed. And when we approve, your approval will be appreciated. The form can be signed, initial limited inquiries made, and you have a copy of that. And this is the result of meetings with the trust, and Lynn and Steve. Steve is DPW director, and Lynn is personnel director, or acting, or in one of the many hats she wears that maintains the personnel records, will be monitoring and administering the policy. Steve, you've looked at it, Lynn, you've looked, it's really, there's no issue for you here, is that correct?
Well, there's issues.
Well, no, but I mean, you understand.
Oh, no, I understand exactly what we have to do.
And
Not that I want to do, but I have to
It's
do.
just another pain in the butt.
This is an entirely digital warehouse of information. Based on, it's information that we would not know. Or I'll give you just a quick scenario. One of our current employees decides he wants to apply somewhere else. Well, they accept him, and then they give him a drug test, and he fails it. Well, the town of Exeter would not know about that from the other agency or other business.
But you can go on and
This,
check.
now, it's mandatory starting today, that all employers for CDL holding individuals have to report this information based on every drug screen that's done. So, that's how, then that's why they want us to do an annual limited query into every employee's drug screens. Because it's not our drug screens we're worried about, it's when they do them somewhere else and we don't know about it. That's what this whole thing is about, public safety on the highways. This is where it came from, federal motor and federal highway. So this way, when we do the query, it's not gonna tell us anything. All it's gonna tell us is there's a record on file. When that happens, the trust says that we have to do a full inquiry, which at that time, the employee, a full inquiry into their drug history, which is in this clearinghouse. At that time, we have to go on and do a full inquiry into their license, which is all based on the CDL license, okay? Not social security or anything like that. It's all based on your driver's license number. Because when anything's reported for a CDL driver, it goes on their license number. So we'll then, at that time, the employee has to grant us permission, the town permission, to do the inquiry within 24 hours. Or they have to be removed from operating a CDL vehicle, or any public works vehicle, for that matter, here, because of the way the trust works. So they would not be able to drive a vehicle in this town until they give us that full inquiry ability. Hence the problem, one of the problems that's gonna come up, is this is gonna end up having to go into CBA for being a mandatory for the employees. So there's other things that'll come, but we can get that done, I believe, in the next 6 months, no problem. Or 4.
So it's required.
It's
when-
federally mandated.
And it might not in the long run be.
We may never have to do a full inquiry. You know, that's the thing.
And I'm sure the private company that's doing it's the same ones that's doing the background checks for hazmat and everything else. And,
I'm not sure. This is done through the drug screen company, somewhere out of New Hampshire, I believe.
Occupational health.
Occupational health.
Who's hired by the trust.
They're not hired by the town at all.
yeah.
That's
No,
fully by
I
the
mean,
insurance company.
It's always this one conglomerate that gets this work.
Well, yeah, they actually offer us a package where we could pay them to do it, but we can simply do this ourselves. We don't have that many employees.
Cheaper than having them do it.
Right, because for us, it's $1.25 every time we have to do an inquiry, which is, on all of our CDL drivers, it's once a year. Until we have to do a full, then it's another $1.25, which obviously we have to pay ahead for, which is not a big dilemma, but it's just another thing we have to do, unfortunately. And then also, the trust is making it mandatory as part of this. We have to check their driving record every year as well, which is another thing that's new, coming this year.
And the trust can do it themselves.
They could, just as easy as we
The
can.
insurance company, they can look right up.
But they're forcing it down our throat, unfortunately. So that's the whole thing, it's another federal program that we have to adhere to, based through the insurance company. If we were self-insured, we'd have to do it anyway, ourselves.
You make a point, obviously, some communities are self-insured, however, it seems like the track record, from what I understand, as being a part of the municipal interlocal risk management trust, has served the town very well. I mean, our recent experience is that they've responded very quickly to our concerns, so it may be in the long run a benefit to the community and your department in particular. It might. But
It's
not.
aimed to make the roads safer from impaired drivers.
Not such a bad idea. That being said, other questions entertain then a motion to adopt the policy.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Other discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Next item,
The new,
beg your pardon?
alcohol policy, right? That's what you just approved.
Let's vote,
Item E.
yeah, E,
Okay.
okay? It's fast over here, Madam Clerk.
No, I mean, you're approving the new policy that the trust sent us.
Right, exactly.
Which the form is all set. Or do you want a separate vote on that form?
As long as it's included with that, I'm good.
Well, it's not in the policy.
Then we'll have to have them approve the forms.
Well then, entertain a motion, I'll make the motion that we approve the form that's been proposed, in an effort to comply with the ordinance.
Second.
And the motion is seconded. Discussion. Those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, so voted.
Thank
I
you.
think we've got it covered now?
Think so.
Good. 9F, harassment policy. Ken's done some work for us. Ken, speak to it quickly, would you mind? Tell us what you've done.
We have a fairly new harassment policy. The issue was that it had to be revised every time the council turned over. And so what I did was remove the council president's name and vice president's name and place that on the posting that will go into the work area where the employees' official employment postings are made. So it's just removed from the policy, put on the attachment according to our policies, a policy on policy, that when we number something as an attachment A, B, or C, it is part of the policy, yet it can be revised at any time administratively. So when, if there's an election, there's a new president or vice president, Lynn could just make the changes without having to have a vote or to revise the policy.
It's an administrative move.
Makes sense. Ken, a quick question on that, what you have, draft one from December, attachment A. When we approve this, that standing language will be, we'll get rid of draft language and just, will we call it attachment A, or would you use the word revised attachment every time it has to be updated, say every 2 years, for example?
No, it matches the policy number. If the policy changes,
Well, this addendum,
yeah, it'll be,
We'll be changing the notice date every 2 years.
the notice date will be changed on.
so,
So the
okay.
notice date, we'll change it every 2
Is
years.
this the same thing here? Yeah,
See the little date?
notice date, right, and it says draft, but there'll be a notice date
Oh,
with
tonight.
whatever, okay, and then every time it has to change,
That'll
there'll be a
change.
new notice,
Yep.
new notice,
No,
which
it'll
can
still
be
be the same policy.
forwarded, right, forwarded separate from all the rest.
Correct.
Or except a new employee or something probably needs it. No, they don't necessarily need it, no.
No.
It's our policy, it's our internal policy governing how we,
This is a town policy that these go together,
right,
not in this manner, but,
no, it's good.
yeah.
Well, thank you for the work you've done on it. It seems to make sense to do it. Lynn, any concerns? All good?
Yeah, that
Council,
helps.
questions? Hearing none, a motion to approve this policy as presented tonight.
I'll make a motion.
Motion made and seconded, other discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Item G, let me just say that as I asked Lynn to include this item on the agenda, I should have just quote, I should have said preparation of reports of zoning board decisions. And this has to do with the responsibility of the clerical staff. Once a meeting is held, and the decision has been made, those reports have to be issued. And in the interest of learning curve, as it will, or time for the new clerk to be acclimated to the job that she has, because she has not done this previously. The issue is here, any assistance that she might need, is she able to ask for that? And I think we would say, of course, and we just want to be sure, and she wanted to be sure, that would be the case. So, I guess my concern would be that we authorize or my issue here would be to authorize the clerk to contact legal counsel for any assistance that she might need in preparing reports of decisions.
This brings up a whole another issue as to who should be responsible for writing these decisions. I don't think we have a policy in place in the town, in the charter or any place as to who should be responsible for writing these decisions. In my opinion, a clerk should not be writing the decisions. In other towns, they have staff that writes it, or the solicitors write it. Matter of fact, had to actually go through and go through several towns and how they handle these issues. And they all vary, but they do have a policy on how they handle it, and most of them have a staff. In my opinion, especially with a new clerk having to draft these decisions, was totally alien to her. I think at this point in time, we should have the solicitor who would be the most appropriate to that draft these decisions. I know it may cost a little more to have the solicitor do it, but he does have a template, a format for doing this. He does understand the zoning. He's at the meeting, so that he can handle this. Perhaps at a later date, once we develop a policy, the clerk might be able to handle this sort of thing, except for maybe some type of major decision that the solicitor would have to address or draft. But I think we got two problems. Number one is clerk currently is not. It's totally unfamiliar with this. And number two, we don't have a policy as to who should be doing this. In actuality, my preference would be that the zoning officer should be doing this. The zoning officer, although we call him the zoning inspector, he issues permits and applications, to use applications, does inspections. I think he should also be responsible for doing the attending the zoning meetings and writing these draft decisions. Obviously, our current zoning inspector is an elected position. His duties are not clearly spelled out. I don't think he's at this point in time any more capable of writing a decision probably than the clerk is. So at least on an interim basis, I think probably should be the solicitor should handle writing these decisions. That's my take on the situation.
Yeah, well, just briefly, I know I spoke to Dixie last week, and she had said she contacted the solicitor who provided her with some input, which I think she found very helpful. I think I thought she wanted to be sure. I think she wants to be sure that that's going to be available, and we would authorize her to do that. That was my understanding. I know you want to go further. Jim and I had spoken about who should be actually writing the report of the decision. And Jim, the zoning officer, did you think that was maybe the right thing?
Now, I'll give a little bit of perspective first. I've been here for over 20 years or so, and the system, while it changes with each zoning board to a slight degree, has always been pretty much the same. Number one, the decision is always made at the meeting, at open meeting, where evidence comes in. The clerk keeps the minutes. They have to be good minutes. Everything that every zoning officer, or excuse me, every zoning board member says that is the basis for that member's decision should be captured. So those things are a learning curve for the new clerk to know how to do that, to make sure that whenever someone speaks as to why they're voting in a particular way, that it's captured. At that point, in the past, one of the ways it was done was the zoning chairman would then get this and put something together. If it was a particularly complex matter, or for instance, if it's contentious and you know there's going to be appeal, and you want to make sure that all the legal bases are covered and that all the right factors that were stated at the meeting are incorporated into the decision, it's usually run by the town solicitor, who then will provide assistance and always has. So our office is always ready to assist, but we've never written decisions, but that would be a tremendous amount of work. Most of the work in putting together the report of the decision and actually placing it into a written document usually has to come from the clerk, the secretary of the board, in keeping good minutes, and from the members of the board, and usually with someone on the board who looks at it and says, yes, this is the way the decision is, and then if there's concern about it, goes to the solicitor. Many of the decisions, as you know, are routine, unobjected, you know, and as long as there's a template, as you said, that the various factors are placed into the decision, it becomes a fairly easy thing to do. So when I first heard this issue, I said, sure, we'll do whatever the town council or the board wants. Well, my concern always is, look, we'll do whatever, but just make sure that the town council understands that if you switch the decision from an advisory input on complex cases to actually doing all the work, putting it together and all that could end up as a significant bill on the solicitor's budget, which you all need to know about. So I don't think that's what was intended. I think it was just to rely a little bit more on the solicitor to take a look at things, to get us through this hump while there's a learning curve. And that certainly makes sense. And we'll do whatever you say. We will. If you say write them, you know, take everything together and then go back to the board and make sure that they're comfortable with everything that's said, that's one way of doing it. But I don't know policies that, you know, this town has never had a specific policy that X person writes the decision. It's always been something that the board has generally handled and always relied upon the solicitor when there's a complex issue or it's contentious and you know it's going to court, so you want to make sure it's in the right legal form. That's usually the way it's been done.
When I was on the zoning board, the chairman would write it.
Right.
And basically, the way Narragansett is how we operated. And like when we got into Deerbrook, then Steve Delarge was writing it.
Right.
So, but because the majority of what that zoning board does is dimensional variances in Cedar Grove and Little Lake. That's probably 80% of their decisions, you know, it's a setback. But to be fair, I would go with what Narragansett's doing, you know, until she gets into the groove of things. And,
Jim, could you write a decision and then defend it if we were sued? Is that a conflict?
We never write the, I mean.
They're writing what was in the actual minutes when they.
It's compiling the minutes and placing the language of the minutes and the language of the board during the meeting and of the various witnesses into a draft generally. When it happens that way, then it's always authored by the board, not by the solicitor.
Right.
And it always has to go back to the board who says, okay, we do want to stress this fact, or we don't, or I didn't say it that way, or I did. We never write it. We just often will say, okay, these are the factors that you need to reach, for instance, if it's a use variance or it's a dimensional variance. If, for instance, someone writes an opinion that doesn't say that there was, it was more than an insubstantial inconvenience when this was done, then you might lose, and it might be an ineffective act. So as long as there's facts in the record, those are usually mustered together by the secretary and reviewed by the solicitor, and then perhaps a draft could go, but that's, I mean, we are never the author of the decision.
Yeah,
The author of the decision is always the board. And so there's always an extra step that should be taken where someone, either the chair or the board reviews that and then adopts it, or changes it as they see fit. But usually that's on a complex thing. Like I said before, the solicitor's office usually doesn't get involved at all if it's a routine thing or if nobody asks for help. In this case, as I understand it, because there's a learning curve going on and the new individual is trying to do her best, but is a bit overwhelmed by the fact that she's never done these things before, she's looking for a little bit of assistance until she gets her sea legs.
Especially since I think in the past, the zoning, like Dan said, the chair of the zoning board used to actually
Right.
Yeah,
write
yeah.
them.
And I think
And
that's not
this-
a bad policy, because quite frankly, that's a person who sat there, who's actually mustering the vote, putting it down into words, and then always it can come to the solicitor.
That's how it would go, and like, we pretty much did it the way Mary Hanson does, like, when you got into something, like, when it was something in Deerbrook, Bill would write it, Bill Monahan, and then Steve Brillard still worked for you at that time, Steve would review it, you know, so.
It's always been the way.
Basically, you're just going off what the decision was in the meeting minutes.
The thing that happened was Lori was so darn good at mustering things that it hardly ever, no one ever thought that the solicitor even had to look at it. If it was a situation where, for instance, there was one case that was remanded back by the Superior Court for certain findings, the solicitor looked at it, the assistant solicitor looked at that, at those minutes and said, okay, these are the things in the minutes that you want to make sure you incorporate into your decision, because that's what the judge said she wanted to hear. You know, your decision on that. So, I mean, those are the kind of things that will typically happen without getting into how decisions are actually arrived at, because that's totally the function of the board. But that's been our role. It hasn't been in drafting them. But that's, I mean, if more work is required just to get people over the hump and mustering those facts and making sure that everybody's comfortable with that, we'll do whatever you tell us. But it probably won't be much different from what we've done in the past, other than it might be a little bit more intense during this short
Well,
term.
I know that Cycle has a format for doing a template, for doing that.
I'm sure he does. I mean, sure,
Yeah.
he knows the factors for every single decision
Yeah.
that should be made. Going back to one thing where you said that the zoning officer, we have a bit of a different situation here in Exeter, in that we have an elected zoning officer who has a certain, his sphere of what he is supposed to do is pretty much prescribed. Very often, it's the decision of the zoning officer that's before the zoning board. You do not want the person whose decision is the focus of a board's action to be writing it. You really don't. Or even suggesting how it should be written. That would not be appropriate in my mind. They could certainly say, they could weigh in, but to write it, no, I don't think so. And plus, don't forget, this is an elected position. It's not simply for instance, the planning board's totally different. Your planner, by charter, is supposed to assist the planning board at the meetings and help muster these things. It's actually written in. Our zoning officer has none of those kind of charges. So I would suggest against having a zoning officer do that, because I don't see the grounds for it within either the charter or the state enabling law, or even our ordinances for the time being. Those decisions are left up to the board, and they are the author. The question is, how do you put it together? That's usually done to varying degrees in different ways, but it's their decision. They must be the ultimate author of it. However you decide, whatever help you think needs to be done and mustered in order to get us through this period of time, when we have a new person who has to actually capture the facts that are stated at the meeting and then put them together in a cogent fashion. It's up to you.
Again, Frank's spoken, I think Mike's spent some time upstairs, and I also have had a conversation with a new clerk, and she indicated that she had notes from a zoning meeting and heard a case, and just wanted to be sure that she was presenting a report of the decision in a format that was appropriate. So in fact, as she told me last week, she was given a template, which I'm sure if she has an issue, I mean, the idea is, if there's a problem, trying to figure out how she fits the information into that template, she could get some assistance.
Absolutely.
And once she's learned this process, I don't think it would be an issue. And, I mean, I just brought this decision, for example, from November, where it says, somebody presented, that was not her work, there was no public comment, so then there's a series of information given. Therefore, the petition is granted by the zoning board with the following stipulations, and then there are 4 stipulations listed, which is part of the vote of the meeting, and now this is the way it was reported.
Is that one Laurie had done?
It is.
Because
It
I think
is.
one of the things that happened too is I think Dixie, the new clerk, is seeing the format that
It's not the
Laurie's
same.
using.
Right.
And then talking with Seipel, he had a format that he uses, and I think she's told which one
Well, I
she can
think-
use. That's why I was saying, maybe we should have some type of format that's standardized.
Well, I don't know if you can
But
do.
maybe that should be left to the zoning board.
Well, there's no format that needs to be done in every single decision. I mean, it could be helpful, but I'm sure that, I can't think of any faulty decisions over the last 20 years, really, where it was a poorly written decision that ended up being the problem. But, so you might have something that looks a little bit different. If someone comes to the lawyer and says, hey, how do you like these decisions to look? How would you set it up? You're gonna have something that looks like a legal brief. And the board could basically plug in the facts that they feel ought to go in, state the standards, state the testimony, state the findings. You know, it'll look like that. But something like this is perfectly fine. Because the law only requires that a decision be made and that certain facts are plugged in. I mean, yeah, we could have something that looks like a Cadillac, or you could have something that looks like it does the job. You know, it's all a matter of style more than anything else.
Well, you know, so I think in terms of how we handle this at the planning board, where it's very formatted, we have to address
Right.
facts or findings, et cetera, et cetera.
If Steve probably gave her something that said, look, these are the things you have to hit. when you
That's
have
what I'm
these kind of-
saying,
Yeah, I think he's already done
Part of
that.
the
Because she asked.
She's asked, and I think the purpose of tonight was just to make sure that we could assure her that she can continue to get assistance should she need it. And that was the reason it's here, and just to be sure that she's not questioning whether she should be doing what she's doing. That's the only reason it was here. And so I would say that the message is, and I would certainly move to allow and instruct the clerk to refer to legal counsel for the zoning board, any questions she might have regarding the preparation of her reports of the decision of a zoning board. And she's going to quickly find out whether it's a pro forma, I'm sorry, if there's a second to my motion, I'll explain why I made it. Is there a second?
Second.
Oh. My point is that if it's a simple enough without questions, I'm sure she'll be able to move forward. If I were she, and there was a contentious meeting where people were there, witnesses were called, she just might feel like she needs to be sure that she's captured it properly. And if I were she, I would feel the same way. That's my reasoning for my motion. Okay, Tom, did you want to speak?
Yeah, just a brief comment from the zoning board perspective. I think where you've ended up is where I would have suggested. I think between the president of the board and the clerk, they can expect her to come up to speed in a reasonable time, and certainly anything she prepares can be drafted or checked with Steve Seipel. When you talk about counsel, I assume you're referring to him
Yes,
as opposed to yourself.
I would.
And I would be very cautious about thinking in terms of the zoning inspector doing this for any number of reasons.
Well, I
Jim
think-
mentioned him. But among others, he doesn't even attend half the meetings. So I think that would be a wrong direction. But otherwise, I think where you're going is good.
Yeah, I didn't mean to make a convoluted or protracted issue out of this. I just want to make sure that we could get back to her with some guidance that we would encourage her to get whatever assistance she needed. So that's my motion, it's been seconded. Is there discussion? Other, Mike, anything? Add to? Okay, anyone? Hearing none, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Thank you. And actually, that falls into, it's a perfect segue to item H, which is additional clerical support. And this is placed on the agenda because I would recommend at the the recommendation of the planner, who's working upstairs with the new clerk, that Lori Field be compensated with some additional time. She's only met with Dixie, the new clerk, at one zoning board meeting, as I understand it, and one planning board work session. And so in order for her to get a sense of a real planning board meeting, we authorized, if you remember, Lori, to come in through the end of December. I would like to suggest that she be able to come back again through the month of January to provide assistance. Dixie showed me a list of questions she'd like to ask, and I think if they could sit down together, it will help Dixie to be acclimated.
I'd make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Motion is made and seconded to allow, to allow Dixie to have Lori give more hours, more time to help her get herself, her feet on the ground.
Primarily at the meeting, although some walk
Okay.
in the office as well, but primarily.
Well, at the meeting, and Dixie showed
Showing
me a
me and the
list
planning
of,
board.
yeah, Dixie showed me a list of questions that she had, some of which pertain to meetings, but not all.
Bullseye's not doing
I
it.
understand. So that being said, is there other discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. And now we'll move, if we could, to unfinished business.
Sam Adams called my name. I gotta go to work at 6:30.
Okay, we're gonna move along. I hear you, Dan. We're moving along. It was not the cause of all the protracted conversation. Let's move. Item 10A, historic preservation. I'd like to ask Ken. Ken has met with Brian Patch.
Right.
Ken, tell us about your meeting on Friday.
Friday, we did the tour of the 3 facilities.
Keep it quick,
The
please.
hall school, Woody Hill School, and the old town hall. And so we have I have a punch list that Brian and I came up with of things that need to be done. I'm gonna put it on a spreadsheet, see if we can get a quote, what we wanna talk about, maybe at the next work session. And then the council can prioritize where you wanna go with this. The Woody Hill School's in really good shape. Hall School's in really good shape. And the Old Town Hall's in really good shape, except for minor cosmetics. And it's just gonna be, what's the priority? Seal the envelopes, keep them nice and clean, start on either side if you want. But that'll be up to Monday night.
And we're gonna put that on a Monday night work session, but Ken has one other factor he needs to include, we've discussed. Can anyone think that we need to think of what we may do with these buildings, specifically the old town hall? So keep thinking, you know, be creative. Right, Ken?
Quote, put an addition on with the bathroom.
She'd love it.
Stairway,
Yes, I agree.
and updating electricity and getting water and all that.
The old town hall?
The old town hall. But Brian seemed to think that building, all 3 buildings are not movable. Because of the age, they're gonna fall apart.
No one's talking about moving,
Right,
you
so
weren't, you were
This
just,
is way back when we had the
Ken,
discussion.
I know we did, yes, there was a question
Brand new
about
outhouses
moving it.
in the spring is across the street, about 30 foot in the woods from town hall.
Anyway,
So we're talking about Monday night.
yes, Ken would also think of a department or two he'd relocate, but he's not serious. Don't look over here at these, Ken, I'm just kidding.
It's a nice building, it should be
I
good.
think exactly.
It's bigger than this room.
Ken, I have another issue,
It is.
please, via, what please? What did I miss?
It's bigger than this room.
And all the data and the file, well, I don't send, we never send you out for any files, do we? We just have everything we need. Okay, the parking could be a little tight, but that's okay. All right, Ken, I have another issue, and that's communication 12. And it's, I know, don't laugh, it's about grants to consider Exeter, putting items on Exeter's National Register. And did you see, and I see that one's already identified back here on this list as the West Exeter Baptist Church. So there's about grant money. Did you see 12?
Yeah,
No, we can't do
They
that.
wanna pay for the plaques and to get them registered. We always kind of said we don't want these. registered because it creates the possibility of creating historic districts, which now implement the taxes and people want to renovate certain properties, and it's more of an administrative nightmare than it's worth.
You can't have a building without having a district?
No, but you have to have certain rules in place if you want historic properties. And so say the old town hall, we did not register that as historic property because we wanted to be able to use it.
For other things. Right, just checking in with you, that's
Yeah,
all.
yeah. It's not enough money to even.
That's all, okay. Let's move to item, unless Ken, anything else
No,
for
that's
us
it.
under report?
Only
Item 10B, you've received a notice that we created, or Lynn and I crafted last week, and it reads to employees, part-time, full-time, board and commission members from the council, dated the 2nd, workplace harassment training. The trust will be conducting a workplace harassment training session here, Tuesday the 14th, 9:30 a.m., council chambers right here. The building will close for an hour. All employees, part-time, full-time, are expected to attend this session. This is by the trust, they're offering this, it's important. We've been told by legal, not this legal counsel, but others, someone else we needed to. Then a night training session is under consideration. We've added this because we're gonna see what happens here on that Tuesday. And then we know that there are people who work during the day, that are on boards, commissions, they can't come here during the day. Some may, if they're retired. Some who are gainfully employed might want to stop by. Anyway, DPW, well, you should, if you haven't received it, just a point of information, did you get anything like this yet? Okay, it's on its way, isn't it? Tom says he hasn't seen it, but it will come his way, right?
I'll make sure Dixie forwarded it.
Okay, and it could be that it's being forwarded upstairs, but no, she was out today, ill, I believe. She didn't come in, did she? No. DPW director match check, this clarifies an issue here, will identify and send those employees that not previously trained because some of his crew have been. So, did you see this?
Yes.
Oh, you saw this, but council, you have a notice, and
Yep.
if you can, I know some of you can't, if you can, please be here. Item 10C, I don't have a report. Anything you'd like to speak to, Mr. Liaison, Frank? I don't know if they've been able to do any more work.
I haven't been to a work session lately, so I'm not be on what they are. It's usually on their agenda for every work session.
Okay. Manny, were you able to meet again on the website?
No, we're in the process of scheduling the vendors to come in and speak with us. I anticipate having a date within the next 2 weeks, so the first vendor will come in. I'll try to get 2 vendors, and I don't know how many, but I'll be meeting with at least one of them before the next meeting.
Okay, thanks, Manny. We don't have any new information, I believe, on
Yeah,
the
last
transfer station.
time we spoke, I got back to our attorney, asked him for a bit more information from the surveyor. He passed that on. Tried to get in touch with him today to find out where he was at, and he was not in, so I should have another report for you, but again, that's with the surveyor right now. Things are getting done.
Okay,
We're moving on.
good. Item 10F regards our impact fees. Ken, you're right.
Presented before you is the proposed public hearing version of the draft. We want to put on for the public hearing in February.
Oh, so I don't complain yet?
What, you want to complain? All right, never mind. So you're gonna be here Monday?
Yeah.
So before we have the council's response, do you want to put on the work session for Monday? And then we can get it on the agenda, because Dan has comments. I don't know if you wanna hear it now.
Comments,
There's lots of
and I haven't read the whole thing.
So instead of going through it right now,
Fee study.
Ken, could you just,
he has comments
For-
on Monday night. from the
right, but
council.
tell us the process through which you've given this to us. I mean, haven't you reviewed it with the vendor?
He hasn't reviewed the updated policy.
But you've worked with Jim, I think?
Right. And then, we have the new impact fee study, which focuses on the roads and highway department, DPW. Because the schools no longer have the population to support having.
Is that your water?
Justify having an impact fee for the growth in the schools. So we changed the ordinance, added sections. Two sections now included. One maintains the piece on the schools, takes away one, go back to it if we need it. And the second part includes all of the new pieces, components that are in the impact fee study, and additional pieces in case an impact fee study is revised. It includes other areas. So
Correct.
it's pretty comprehensive.
Yes, two sections,
Yep.
one for schools, which will not probably be used in the near future,
Right.
and the other one for public facilities, mostly DPW type operations, which can be used as the basis for impact fees in the future.
Would
That's
we
the
be,
section.
would we be approving both versions, or one?
It's one,
It's one document?
it's one ordinance.
It's one document, yeah, there's really only a second section that was added. The first section stays just as it is, pretty much, right? Yeah.
One-
With one little T. And the second section
Yeah.
brings in the new concept of public works facility type things as the basis for the impact fee.
It contains the new impact fee.
With the new
schedule
impact
with the
fee.
study. So it's, it's like, Dan has comments, I have comments. Instead of waiting for the public hearings, you do have comments. We talk about it Monday night, get it on the February agenda. And then
Well, yeah, I would, okay, a couple of things. First, Ken, again for the record, remind us that the beginning of the process included DPW director, planner, treasurer, I believe, and perhaps clerk, but several of you sat here to get this started. And then this is the
we met
culmination
with the
of,
consultant, picked the projects that we
Right.
thought would be
Feasible.
feasible, because it takes in the state rules up to 10 years to do a capital program, and if we don't come up with the impact fee funds, then the town has to pay for the rest. So we picked some pretty, reasonable projects that they should be fully funded by the impact fees within the 10 years. And moving forward, Steve certainly can use the money for the roads and for the DPW based on what the impact fee studies are gonna provide.
well, right, and just, again, for the record and the public's information, this was a process that began, what was it, 6, 8 months ago?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
2 years ago.
Because you had your impact fee study program.
Yeah.
Well, when we met with that consultant, it was a couple of years ago.
This was,
Yeah.
this was,
Well, I think we need to move
it
forward.
was approved July 1st of 2019, so it's not that
Okay.
far off to get from the study,
July what, when, 16?
2019. So July 1st, 2019, the study was approved.
That's when the study.
Then the ordinance now comes into play, and that's what was a little more tricky, because we have to match the ordinance up with the study.
And I know you've labored for hours on this,
Yes.
you've described spending hours and hours at a time to try and make it
Trying to
fit.
figure it.
And you spent some time too, didn't you?
Absolutely.
Well, see, I'm gonna move that we post it for a public hearing, we can talk about it Monday night, but we need to move forward, and I would move that we advertise for public hearing on February 2nd, I think we decided, what's the date? Remember when we were looking at that? Anybody, February 2nd,
Second or third?
3rd, anybody? No?
Need a second?
Well, yeah,
Second.
please. Motion is made and seconded that we post for public hearing the next regular council meeting, which I think is February Anybody got the calendar? Second or third?
Commercials too much.
All right, question, comments? Hearing none, those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, so voted. Ken, you'll place it, you'll work out a work session agenda, which will include this, and Brian Patchett's report, so to speak, or an update on what he's found.
The third.
The third, thank you, February 3rd. Anything else on this issue? Ken, thank you very much, and Jim, for the hours and hours of work, and then Maria and all the rest of you contributed to the process. Item G, I believe, is still on hold. We've heard no feedback from planning.
No, they still, they just wanted the planning board members to come back with some new information they could still consider, so still working on it.
Okay, thank you. H was placed there, and is there any additional information that anyone wants to do?
Is that the fish house?
Yes, it's
Yeah.
Highland Court, Exeter.
So I know Mr. Davis provided some information. I'd ask you to keep it on the agenda one more month, and I'll speak with Councilman Di Gregorio sometime prior to the next meeting.
Okay. Item I. This is the notice of to enforce issues at South County Trail. That's the public garage. I just would like to say for the record here that it's been commented, it's been pointed out that I received a notice. Every communication that I receive is passed on to all of the council. So for the record, any letter, any communication I've received has been shared with all of you. It's not something that I've been privy to or kept to myself. I think it's the same information you received, Steve, as well. I just wanted to say that for record. I don't think there's anything else to be done with that issue tonight. Is that correct, Steve? The historical cemetery issue, we've left it there. I noticed that Lynn, just as recently as today, reached out to Sheila Reynolds, and this was partly with regard to the lady that wanted to make the donation, but she has been apparently unable to pursue that. Is that correct? She's tried.
She said she was gonna try, and she.
Right, but when I happened to meet with her, or see her here one day, we were both here, and she said she's tried, she thinks that it might not happen, and the lady might not be any longer in a position to make that donation. So I think we can remove that. If we do hear something, let's put it back, but let's remove item J from that agenda if there's no objection. And we get to reports. Ken, anything additional to add?
Well, budget season's coming up, so the request will be going out by the end of the month. And then I'm preparing the documents that you need to start off the process.
Comes quickly.
We just finished it. And then from Manny, I was working on, the issue of having non-commercial bodies and events on private property. That I've been doing a lot of research on it, and there's really no municipality that has any kind of ordinance against it, but a lot of them support the private property owners for doing private parties, not commercial ones, by having FAQ sheets and supporting them, and they can fill out, so then they can actually fill out a form for assistance, so they could have the DPW, visit them about the traffic or the parking or the town sergeant. I'm working on creating one for that.
Okay.
And it's just an information flow, bringing the town in, right? Tell them what issues, right?
Yeah,
The
good idea.
This and that, bathroom stuff, and all this.
Because we have a police department, they're always there to respond to issues like that if there's a problem with the neighborhood.
We're gonna be proactive and not need this not do that.
Ken, we had,
Kingston Police used to give us a map, tell us to bring our kid cars to Exeter.
I know that, I know that.
Ken, rather than get off track here,
Yeah.
Ken, didn't we talk about possibly having a simple form if someone came in and
Yeah.
asked Lynn, and just a simple little, this is what I'm doing, just so
Yeah,
that,
so they know the rules and they
That-
know
that's
the
kind of-
ordinances, yeah.
so it's a possibility that
Yeah,
you
that's what I
can
plan.
come up with something like that. That's good. That's good. That's good.
Providence.
Ken, not to prolong, but
Cape Marines?
Yeah, half and half actually.
no more cake talk party, please. I know the day is getting warm. Ken, quickly, I saw an agenda fairly lengthy for library, and since we appointed you and you're now chair, do you want to give us a thumbnail? How are things going?
Good, it's, there's a lot of work going on, there's a lot more attention being paid to the actual structure of the library than the activities, say, that was the priority before. And, I think Amy's on board, she likes to have the, I wouldn't say supervision, but support to be more structured. So there's rules that are being drafted, there's some that are in place that are being revised. And, I think it will be more clear actually what the role of the library is, what the board is, and who's doing what that. Right now, everything's kind of with the previous board, the previous board pretty much the one that started up the library. It was all based on programming and getting the community involved and all that, and not really so much on the operations of the library. And I think that's the direction that we're going in.
It's good. In other words, because I heard from someone a month or two back who was very happy to see you sitting there and providing some.
We're not pushing the issues or anything.
And you're just
Amy's
trying
gone
to
right along.
lay out and point out some concerns that you all should have.
We also, we're
Thank
putting
you.
together the capital program for the expansion of the library.
Okay, next, anything else, Ken?
And you want me to just bring up now about, one quick one, I'll do it now.
Yeah.
Well, he'll do it later.
What's this gonna be?
Do you want me to research the building fees, permit fees issue? Do you want to talk about that now?
Bounty Francisco's request.
Just don't want
For
to.
the-
Oh, that was gonna be under, wasn't that
I don't know if
administrative?
you just
That's
want to
what
get
you
rid of
need to
that.
discuss.
No, I don't have it there. I have 3 notes under administrative. That's not one of them.
All right.
Talk to me, us.
Well, I was notified or told from a few people that
Oh,
the building permit fees, the company that the state contracted with now charges us extra because we went over.
38 records.
They charge us $3,800.
They charge us $17.50 for going over 38 records,
Yeah.
and then they bumped us up to the next level tier for next year.
So the state's charging us more money, the vendor, to do the permitting, and so the option was, can we add in the ordinance that a user
The
Processing.
Processing.
processing fee?
It's gonna be on the February agenda.
Yes.
But thank you. See, the point, you understand here, we're talking about the e-permits, it costing money, and Ron shook his head and it said, it's costing us money. Maria came by and said, we need money, and then we put it, she didn't really, but then we made a note, and I said, Lynn, put it down, it's gonna be February, new business. So,
And you're gonna direct Ken to
I'll work on
Ken.
it.
work on it
To be
this month.
prepared,
would you,
see
so
Jim.
that you can come back to us
Yeah.
and, so that, we equated that to collecting, a bit of collecting taxes with a surcharge thing, so this is different when you use the
They
permitting.
called it
Not a permit, a user,
It was a convenience charge.
convenience,
Processing fee.
processing fee, figure out something good to call it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ken.
Right.
Jim, anything more, anything on the solicitors?
After watching the proceedings in Congress, I came up with a new catchphrase for this in appropriate months, and here it is. I yield my time back to the chair.
Oh, that's not funny.
There's nothing to report that isn't covered.
Good. I'm passing, under reports, I'm passing this on to you just because I saved it from the Providence Journal in case you didn't see it. And it's entitled Narragansett Council Violated Open Meetings Act with Manager Search. And we're not doing that, and we haven't done that, because we haven't been doing, well, first of all, we're not searching for a manager, as we know, but take that along if you didn't read it. Just because Jim always counsels us in the right direction, apparently somebody in Narragansett wasn't given the best counsel, but this is all part of the work you do, so I just wanted to pass that along to you. Report number 5, you asked to be pulled.
I had 5, 16, and 17, they've already been covered.
They've already been covered, okay. Steve, with regard to your public works report, I just had a couple of observations. I notice here that on the 16th of December, Kingston Road was graded. And I noticed later in the month that some signage was addressed from what I read in your report, stop signs. I think it said repaired road name and stop sign. But it brings me to the issue that was raised that we've all seen, a message regarding Kingston Road. Could you just give us a thumbs up on what you've done there and why?
All right, what we're doing to Kingston Road is Kingston Road is going to be the next gravel road in town that we pave. All right, because of the traffic, the conditions, the increase in
Did you
homes.
just explain what's?
Yeah, no, I didn't. No. So anyway, the problem with Kingston Road is the material under it is mostly sand. All right, there's obviously processed gravel and different gravels we put down on the road over the years, but it's got the porous gravel of any road in town. So in an effort, it's been proven and it works very successfully at a low cost. We've been stabilizing the gravel so that it will support the asphalt pavement without having to excavate the entire roadbed out and replace it with new gravel, because that is extremely expensive for the length of that road. So what we're doing is we're stabilizing the gravel to offset that cost. The cost that we're putting out is between $5,000 and $7,000 versus close to $1 million to do the excavation and gravel replacement. So basically we're doing this work for nothing versus spending hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to stabilize the road so that we can pave it. This way, what we're doing is we're basically binding all the materials together with, we put on crushed ground asphalt, or what we call wrap, ground asphalt from road jobs. We put in 3/8 chip seal sweepings from our rubber chip projects for the last year, mixed in with the asphalt roof shingles that are ground to a coffee grind consistency, if you've never seen it. And then we apply a petroleum resin that locks all this stuff together, which basically gives us another, under our base layer of asphalt that we'll put down. We'll actually carry that with basically what would equal another inch of asphalt at a very inexpensive cost.
And you communicated this, some of this at least, I think, to the people that.
I did, I responded to an email, but we've done this project now, and this is the 4th road that we've
This is why I'm
completed.
asking you to.
Completed
tell
this
us
project. We
this.
did Widow Sweets Road, did gravel section. We did a section of New London Turnpike to test the process, because that's what has a similar gravel consistency. Plus, I was looking for the dust control as well. And that, being in the ball fields, the Little League that was very successful. And Kingston Road with the houses and the horses, and it's again, very successful in dust control. And we did it to Raymond Potter Lane, where we had some erosion issues and dust issues. Houses are very close to the road. Dust complaints went away for minimal costs. So, and no salt was applied or no hazardous type material. This stuff is locked right up with the gravel. So there's no issues. And there is the biggest thing we had was, if it gets on your vehicle, little warm water, take it right off, because it is water-based. And warm water and a little soap, just like you wash your car regular, the stuff will fall right off your car. And plus it won't hurt your car. So when we pave the road, of course all these issues go away, and we've saved the town untold thousands of dollars.
Steve, how thick is that?
We grade it in about 3 inches, but the carrying capacity equals about 1 inch of asphalt. And we've noticed that our grading goes down over 100%. So if we were grading it every 3 weeks, we grade it every 3 months.
That's true now.
That's true now. The only time we'll have issues, like, obviously, we can't, weather. Weather is our big controlling factor, which is rain and ice and snow. So, and actually, what we're seeing, another benefit that I'm not really publicizing yet, but it's the cutting edges on our trucks are not wearing out as fast on the gravel roads that have this process done to them. So we're getting the same longevity out of our carbide edges as we do on the asphalt roads, where gravel roads normally just chew up a cutting edge quickly, because the stones are all standing up, because the frost pushes the stones up. Think of a bunch of sharp pieces sticking up, the plow edge going over them, it eats them right up. This process holds the stones sort of together and flat, so which means the plow edges scrape the snow off cleanly, but they do not wear the cutting edges out as fast. So we're actually seeing another savings from this process.
This is the first, last winter, this process was not.
We had it done on 2 roads last year,
Okay, but this
but now we have
particular-
it done on far more distance to prove the point.
Kingston Road wasn't done your last.
No, it has been done for this year, as well
This
as maybe
current,
Potter
so
Lane.
This freezing winter, if we have freezing.
Winter.
Winter, if we do.
Yeah, it does, it's still,
Is it gonna, all right, it's good to, well, the point is that we all saw the complaint, and I appreciate you answered, and you just indicated for the record that we're gonna see this come through on your capital plan.
well, you gotta remember, we finished our last capital program.
Yeah, so I'm gonna
For the most
ask you,
part, other than some small little projects we'll finish in the spring.
bringing this in with your budget.
The
this
new
year,
budget will have the new capital program in.
And this road is gonna be.
On the list.
Well, I don't think anybody, I never thought we'd see that happen.
Well, a lot of people never thought Sunland Road would get paved, so, or the
But
turnpike.
that was a different, you didn't
I know.
use this, right?
No, I did not use it on the Sunland
No.
Road, no, I should
Well,
have, but.
good luck. Any other questions of Steve? Anything else you wanna ask, Steve, you wanna add?
No, everything's going
Thank you.
right along.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask you, because I know that's was an issue coming up. Very quickly, I just want to tell you that I did attend, regarding the Job Corps, just a couple of things. A couple of their programs they phased out, but they're very excited about a new program that is going to be electronics engineer technician training program. It's a new state-of-the-art, there's a company that's gotten behind it. They want to be able to train employees, or students, to be able to come into jobs, similar to what Electric Boat did in training welders and get these kids jobs. And they just hope it's going to add to their successful rate of placement. The other question I asked was about runs from rescue. And what we were told that day was that any rescue run that the center requires, because of an issue they see there, and they've asked the rescue to respond, the center pays for it. It's not, Exeter doesn't get charged. As the director said, if a student ends up calling, it's another issue. But one of the points he emphasized, is that with new regulations about tolerance, unlike high schools, that a lot of kids come from a high school where they've been able to kind of mess around a bit and things haven't been too stringent. There's a no tolerance policy, and if they're caught with something they shouldn't have, they're gone. And that also can affect the rating. And they're doing quite well. They're in the upper, was it upper 20%, I think? I can't remember exactly the rating, but they're not number one, but as Adam, the director, said, we don't want to be number one, because we know there's no place to go but down. So, it was a good, I thought, a good productive meeting. Didn't you, Lynn? Lynn was able to attend as well. That was the only point I wanted to make about that, because it's an issue that surfaced before about Job Corps. Any other report issues? I don't
Administrative issues?
Yes, now we're coming to that. What would you like to do?
What's the pilot resolution that we put on last year and the year before? we can address that at the special meeting next week?
We can, and you want it to move forward.
Yeah, because we have to do a formal vote to send a resolution to the,
Yeah, and I did.
not that we're gonna get anything, but we.
No,
might
I
as well.
understand, but it's worth doing. I had asked Lynn to move, to remind the legislators of what we were doing with the VIN check legislation, if we get it in early enough. But we didn't do a new resolution there, did we? And I don't know,
Just sent what we
maybe,
had sent
we just
previously.
said previously.
Do you want us to send what we sent previously, or you wanna do a new resolution?
I think,
I mean, we
there's
have
one from
it.
last year. I think we just gotta change the dates.
Yes.
Or we could just, do we send a
Should
new
we-
resolution,
can we-
or can we
do we
send
have
a
to?
one
You
year
just
already?
adopt a new one, send it up. It's a
Adopt a new one.
It's a new body.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Session.
Can they vote on that right now?
No, it's not properly posted.
You want this one, Liz?
I mean, I
Well,
have.
We had to change one word in there last year, so.
Well, then can I ask Lynn if you put it on for,
I forgot all about it during the
That's all
holidays
right,
for
no, and
tonight.
I had the VIN check thing close by. We moved it out. Why don't we put it on next Monday night?
Yeah, because we have a formal vote to get it right up there.
Move it forward as soon as we can. Well, maybe the VIN checks will work, this may not, but at least give it a try.
I always have fun going to see.
I have three quick issues. One is a FEMA letter that we received. It was sent to me. There were copies sent, but not to Stefan, which intrigues me, because I can't believe he didn't get it. But I'm just gonna pass this on to Lynn or to her staff and ask if this can be copied to, the council can see a copy of this, but I'd like Stefan to be copied as well to Woodland. I just got that the other day, and it doesn't say his name on the bottom, so please send it. Other issue, please, is that you may have, I think you've received a copy of a letter dated December 17th. It was written from our deputy clerk, Arthur Jordan, where she's indicated that pursuant, she's resigned. It's my understanding upon resignation, payroll dues will cease, etc. And I understand that she's met with Arthur Jordan, who said, okay, lady, okay, yes, Pat. So I just want to be sure you know for the record.
And I said,
You know for the record that in fact Pat has pursued this as we did in so many ways. And so letters went out and we've received copies. And thank you for pursuing it. Good luck on you, lady.
I know.
It's all right, it's all right. And
Here I
the
go
other
again.
thing I want to mention real quickly is that I just discovered this weekend something that Frank didn't know, but the rest of you probably do. Our former town sergeant, Richard, is now in an assisted living program. You didn't know either, did you? No. Okay, that's all right. Here's the reason I mention it. I'm gonna ask Madam Clerk with my help to draft a letter from other council to him, wishing him well.
There's no one next door to him.
Not now,
I know his daughter was going to check.
Well, yes, but now, and it's been a little while, so.
They've emptied the house, they're supposed to sell it.
Yeah, so we're gonna, I thought rather than just having Lynn send, the council asked me, instead I'm gonna ask Lynn to craft a letter, which the five of us will sign to him, wishing him well in his new location, and a simple
Where's
thing.
he at?
In Coventry, what's it, do you know the name? It's over near the
What's the name
BJ's,
of it?
Walmart,
Oh, I
that whole
can't think of it.
Cameo complex, I
What's it?
call it.
Brookdale?
Yeah. I think it's
What's it called?
Brookdale.
Okay, one of the things you'll be doing this week is finding out an exact
I have his
address.
address.
Good, okay, so that's all gonna get incorporated in a
Got a
letter.
phone number too?
And I'll bring it back to you for next week, so that we'll sign it. That's all I have. Anything else, administrative? Hearing nothing? Oh, communications.
We covered them all.
I think we did. I think we did. I had just pointed out a couple, but I don't think they're very significant. One was, oh,
How you know I'm on the cold?
yes.
Night,
What you can do for the animals?
motion to executive session.
Move that we enter into executive session under items of, invest something, I think it was, I'm sorry, E, next page, which is, investigative procedure. I think that he's going to.
Five are you?
I don't think we need, there's nothing else. There's nothing in here.
So just the one?
That's it, under E.
Did you already vote?
What's that?